Under the open sky stretched a quiet space boundless, as if time itself had frozen, and so began the journey into the wild wilderness. A strange vision of an insect suddenly flashed in his head sharp, bright, and immediately pulled a memory from the distant past about a hunting stream. He stared into the distance, and felt how exactly 6 months ago his own life was reshaped to madness. The memory slid further to a younger version of himself. A comrade scolded him for relaxing while they were in the field. He again saw their group rushing forward, and suddenly everything came together. If swarms of insects appear, there is no choice, you have to keep going. Isurus looks at the screen with a smile and notes that their simultaneous number of viewers has jumped over 5,000. Chaos flares up as soon as the poisonous amoeba appears. Panic covers everyone, but he remains calm and insists that there is no need to run. He prepares to engage in a fight with the creature, understanding. Filming these insanely tense moments of the hunt is exactly what defines the stream. He refuses the broadcast, throws the camera a confident smile, and invites viewers to tune in to the next episode. In a moment, he arrives at the meeting. The low number of viewers and weak return on his recent investment are only confirmed. His companions criticize the performance, reproaching him. The reaction to the gelatinous monster was too restrained, and the creature should have been made bigger. Then the crowd would definitely have been fired up. The group acknowledges his relentless drive for innovation and notes that the guild leader always keeps a new scheme ready, so their streams do not lose relevance. Thinking about the industry, he says that over the last 50 years streaming technology has become accessible to everyone, and that is why competition has turned into a fierce battle. A maniacal obsession overtakes him when he declares, for Blazing Serpent to become the best guild in the world, they must ignite competitions more often, brighter and more sensational. Almost immediately he launches an emergency stream with a gloomy face, and dropping a sudden statement confuses his subordinate Gashu. He is expelled from the guild. With a sharp snap of his fingers, he dismisses the embarrassment Gosh, and coldly makes it clear that they need to listen to what the audience says about the fire. He immediately goes on air with a shocking accusation. He claims that the man in front of him is stealing the guild's money. The stream shows footage from the office, and voices analyze the grainy evidence and conclusively reach the conclusion. The guilty one is exactly the one holding the great sword. Public sentiment instantly turns to rage. Viewers flood the chat with demands to immediately fire him and with new accusations of criminal actions. He sits at the table and watches as chaos unfolds right before his eyes, his face remaining unreadable as digital anger grows. A woman steps forward, tearfully recounting unwanted harassment, and he cannot stand it. He breaks down and shouts in desperate denial. Tension explodes into a brawl. He tries to break free, but he is even more harshly condemned for raising his hand against a comrade. He stands firm and, pointing an accusatory finger at the man, solemnly orders him to get out of the guild. As soon as the broadcast ends, he drops the act and without ceremony asks his comrade how, supposedly, his tearful performance went. He leans back, satisfied with the production quality of the broadcast, and praises the technical team for their coordinated work with costumes and editing. The guild leader waved off the sudden intrusion of the man, demanding explanations. The tone was cold, disdainfully dismissive. He mocked his grief and hinted that the man's departure would have no significance for the guild's success. The man shuddered in shock as he was ordered to drop the false facade. His confusion grew. Every attempt only backfired against him. The man glanced at his own hands. They trembled as it dawned on him that he had been betrayed. He had worked so hard only because they promised to teach him streaming techniques he truly needed. With a sharp, cruel move, he was knocked off his feet and roughly told that he had been a burden to guilt all his life. Lying on the ground, he listened to the final, stinging insult about what a pathetic contribution he had made. He triumphed, standing over the fallen man, and rejoiced that their brutal performance brought the guild a record number of views. He stands amid the ruins of his former life, his gaze fixed on the digital scoreboard. There are 8,000 viewers. He firmly promised himself to cross the 10,000 mark, casting aside the pain of recent public humiliation and choosing a new path as a streamer. In a moment, he is already on screen, a bright trial smile, a hand waving to the viewers as he presents a new idea, Old Man's Farm Guard. He proudly shows a bright tomato and tells how he grew it on special fertilizer from a neighboring cave. While he speaks, notifications beep. A viewer named Nyatikin-san joined the stream, and he warmly, gratefully welcomes him. The atmosphere in the chat sharply shifts. A harsh comment appears, calling his agricultural efforts boring and directly asking what use to anyone an old man in the field could be. He does not lose his composure, but for a moment confidence wavers from criticism, and he immediately forces himself to laugh, admitting, creating truly captivating content is much harder than it seems from the outside. But suddenly, a warm message for Niantic and Sand cuts through the continuous wave of negativity. It is about the peaceful nature of his dreams, giving a long-awaited feeling of relief. He noticeably relaxes his shoulders, and his face brightens as he thanks his viewer from the bottom of his heart, touched by unexpected kindness. A system message cuts the moment, but he barely reacts, fully immersed in the quiet realization that there are still good souls in this world, far from the toxicity of his former guilt. He carefully watches his interface, noting warnings about the risk of accidentally disclosing private information, yet still dismisses these fears as trivial at the streamer level. With a deep breath, he continues speaking, and a sharp explosion of dust and debris immediately reveals an unexpected threat has appeared on the scene. He freezes in shock, watching as a familiar huge red lizard emerges from the haze. Its presence fills the entire landscape. On the other side of the digital divide, viewers watching the broadcast react with anxiety for a moment. They recognize the creature without error. The beast was identified as a fire dragon, a newly classified Class A monster that poses a deadly threat to anyone who stands in its way. Panic sweeps the chat in waves. Observers warn that such a threat requires a specialized hunting team and urge him to flee immediately. He remains rooted to his garden, shouting in despair at the dragon to stay away from his tomatoes, even as the absurdity of his priorities drives him to a frantic plea. Just hide. The dragon lunged forward with terrifying speed, and he froze, barely managing to dodge the first strike. He barely deflects the deadly blow, and the digital audience explodes with shock and disbelief. They ask, is this a show or a real broadcast? The adventurer stops, stunned by the sudden, mysterious response from his viewers about who this elderly man is. A mysterious observer watches the feed, and from her dark silence, the face suddenly warms genuine admiration for his unexpected skill. Despite the mortal danger, he bursts into anger, lamenting the loss of the precious corn harvest, boiling with rage, while the monster continues its new slaughter. He swears not to show mercy to those who threaten his garden, draws his blade and moves forward, and the viewers, caught up in a wave of excitement, applaud wildly. Then everything increasingly draws new gazes. The number of viewers grows, and the rumor about this strange performance spreads wider and wider. When the fire dragon begins to erupt, the scene throws the audience into complete confusion. They cannot piece together the high stakes of the fight and the agricultural theme of his stream. The traveler recounts the terrifying encounter. The fiery dragon burst out of the flames with impossible speed, then a mysterious warrior appeared and finished off the beast with one strike. The traveler still cannot comprehend what exactly hides behind such power. He exhales a long, exhausted breath. The tension of the day finally begins to release as soon as there is a moment of silence. The camera glides to the remains of the defeated creature, a silent proof of the mastery advantage previously shown. But suddenly he is pierced by realization the recording device had been working all this time, broadcasting every step to the viewers. He freezes in despair, fearing that his indifference made the viewers feel abandoned and disappointed. With a guilty expression, he apologizes to the invisible audience, admits that he has reached his limit for today, and decides to end the broadcast. Nearby, a young woman watches the bustle around the event and notices how lively the conversations flare up. She smiles to herself, satisfied. The first stage of their plan is completed, and she already envisions the next steps. She stood before a wall of notes. Her gaze did not leave the increasingly loud digital chatter, which foretold the birth of a new legend. The novice adventurer freezes before the screen in disbelief. His eyes widen as the viewer count breaks past 17,000. He had already begun greeting his audience, but his voice immediately drowned in the chaotic whirl of messages from newcomers and curious viewers. Yet, striving to regain control, he announced a mundane lesson on chopping wood, and instead of silence, he encountered impatient demands for more excitement. Skipping the pause, he swung his massive blade with honed precision and split the log with one mighty, thunderous strike. 2 days passed, and the quiet town of Mosrif turned into a bustling center of events. Roy approached him with a crate of harvest and made it clear. Rumors about his latest antics were already spreading throughout the entire town. He twitched in shock as the crowd rushed at him and shoved articles about his sudden fame in his face. He found himself surrounded by townsfolk who, with wild courage, shouted and lifted him up. His recent exploits had catapulted him straight into the center of worldwide fame. In this hustle, Gashu approaches him with a gloomy request and recalls a terrifying encounter near the place where a fiery dragon once broke free. The man says he noticed evil eyes watching from the depths of a pit, and immediately everyone agreed to go there and check if any threat remained. They coordinate their plans, deciding to conduct the investigation during the day, while also ensuring that the vegetable harvest in the town will be protected from any insidious danger. While the town gossips about the need for a wife for Gosh, a mysterious woman appears in a cloak and asks where he is. She presents herself as an ardent admirer and declares from the threshold that she has urgent information she must deliver it to him personally. The impressed fan excitedly points to Gosh to others, stirring the crowd into a chase, while he walks away still unaware of how the crowd is growing. From the side, a local woman sincerely wishes Gashu to finally find love. He stands before the dark, gaping maw of the cave, holds a lantern, and forces himself to enter. Behind him, a mysterious woman lingers in the shadows, while anxiety rages in her mind, how exactly to approach him. She shakes off hesitation and pushes herself. Now is not the time for cowardice. As he crawls deeper into the narrow tunnel, he suddenly stops and notices a strange, viscous substance coating the stone walls. The tunnel abruptly opens into a vast cavernous hall, and he kneels down to examine the scale of the space. He focuses on the path ahead and concludes, the tunnel system is much wider than he initially thought. Despite what is happening around, he continues to make his way forward, while the woman from the darkness near the tunnel entrance watches him intently. Suddenly, from above from the cave, a lump of slime falls on her and she laments. He never got the chance to examine the unique features of this cave. She crouches in the shadows and watches as the reptilian monster detaches from the cave's ceiling. This is jaws agape, and it is already set to strike. The beast lunged downward, but he reacted instantly, barely dodging the predator's deadly descent. As soon as the creature landed, she dashed forward swiftly, checking on him, and calls his name with a voice filled with urgent alarm. He pulls her to safety, his eyes wide open in confusion, and he demands to know how the stranger could recognize him. The beast recovers, spits a lump of viscous slime at him, and he urges her to run while he prepares to give chase. She refuses to abandon him, says she has finally found her idol and intends to stay even as the creature prepares another strike. With a sharp and decisive blow, she finishes off the monster, while he remains stunned and gasping, asking how such a sudden turn of events occurred. Standing in the cave's twilight, she firmly declares that she cannot leave him behind, and for a moment he is completely speechless. She closely observed Udormaru and noticed. Their thick hides rendered usual physical attacks useless against these generally peaceful creatures. Turning to Gashu, she insisted he needed a real blade to overcome the threat. He froze in surprise when she herself voluntarily rushed to the weapon, promising to cover him with everything while he waited. The cave exploded into chaos as soon as they narrowly dodged the swift, tusked maw of the beast. When he suggested using communication magic to call for help, she firmly rejected the idea and instead decided to create a glowing magical artifact. She ordered him to activate the object, assuring that it would light their way forward. A heavy, mighty sword lay on the cave floor end, its appearance sharply cut through the surrounding darkness. When the monster lunged forward again, she unleashed a whole series of flickering magical barriers and shouted its name so it would not lose focus on the task. She holds the magical grip, allowing the traveler to deliver the final decisive blow to Yadomeru. He stands among the ruins, and while the tension of the battle slowly subsides, the blade still remains in its sheath. Turning to his companion, he quietly expresses gratitude and acknowledges it was her intervention that became the key to his survival. She points to the dark tunnel and, almost growling a warning, says that the path likely serves as a transit route for new beasts and it must be immediately closed to secure the city. They act together. They collapse the entrance, seal the threat, and take on the guarantee of safety for the nearest settlement. He awkwardly deflects her praise, feeling a sharp pang of guilt for the injuries she sustained while helping him. Tracing the mark on his body with his finger, he involuntarily recalls the mercenary's past and admits he was once much weaker than he is now. He looks at her differently now with new respect and frankly admits all this time she was the one he admired most until he finally dared to introduce himself. She reveals her true identity, Misery Aronia, and hints that the name Nyakin might bring back memories for her companion. He confirms the connection, still stunned that the person he knew as a streamer stands before him and immediately asks how she found him. She explains her discovery grew from careful research. She repeatedly reviewed his past broadcasts to calculate where he is now. A sudden burst of enthusiasm, she urges him to join and establish a new streaming guild in the capital. And this completely unexpected proposal literally shocks him like thunder. The young woman looks at him and his mind spins from the revelation. The humble farmer turns out to be a legendary figure of incredible power. He freezes, stunned, unable to understand why such a mysterious and beautiful girl came to him. As soon as she begins to gesture, they are immediately drenched by a downpour, and she quickly says, they need to find shelter immediately. He suggests continuing the conversation at his home, and this thought clearly stirs the trembling leaves in the wind and ignites a hot thrill in him to the point of frenzy. The rain grows wilder by the moment, lashing the wooden facade of his isolated cabin until they soaked finally reach it. Inside, he gives her space to put down her things, and he goes for a towel to dry off before continuing to talk. For a moment she remains alone and her heart pounds wildly. Finally she is in his house. Suddenly she is seized by an impulse. She grabs her bag and anxiously checks that the important documents inside are dry. He returns exactly at the moment she is busy and hands her a towel politely and attentively, helping in a way she does not expect. She freezes in the room, stretches out her hands, a gesture of stunned revelation while the door opens. Just a few minutes ago the air was tense with awkwardness. He asked if she had brought a change of clothes, and she embarrassedly admitted she had not. He advised her to borrow some from the village women so she wouldn't catch a cold. But his offer was interrupted by a sudden, thunderous refusal. She insisted that she trains regularly and that everything would be fine. Now he stands by the table, his cheeks burning with embarrassment, and tries with all his might not to look at the laundry basket. His own nerves give out first. He turns sharply, awkwardly presses into the basket and decides to burn the tension with fire, and only that way. His gaze catches on a strange document left behind. On the cover, a list of reasons why he should have been divorced. He begins to flip through the pages and finds detailed notes about his character, his secret martial arts, even plans for future streams. The last note catches his eye. It praises his dreams, saying they are completely harmless to everyone. He freezes in shock looking at her. She stands before him wearing only a large shirt, and the pants he gave her have already flown out like a whirlwind. They didn't fit. Embarrassed, he insists, "At least cover yourself with the towel." He seeks clarity and questions what documents she left behind. She explains that she had long dreamed of streaming with him and tells how she had been writing about it for years before she saw his exile on air. Just then, a knock on the door interrupts their conversation. The guest, a sharp-eyed man, does not even try to entertain the idea of joining the fan club. He refuses without hesitation, rudely and directly, dispelling the tension with a single cold, contemptuous tone. Only when he realizes that the guest has come to talk specifically to him does he abruptly get up and leave, leaving the others in the room. Among those who remained, a wave of panic rises as soon as they realize he is gone. The guest, clearly confused by the mischance, breaks down and falls in despair, lamenting that they were late and failed to catch him. To save the situation, the visitor reaches out his hand forward and begs, "Join their guild," promises success as a top performer. But he does not move. He throws a cold farewell at the end and leaves. The axe sharply cuts the air. With icy determination, she declares that she will not work under someone she considers a joke. Her companion, teeth chattering with indignation, steps forward and demands to know why she behaved so rudely and fruitlessly, although until now he had listened to her silently. He watched as the woman exploded with rage, repeating that she would never forgive the insult inflicted by Gashu. Her eyes were wide open with indignation. She stood her ground, restraining the irritation twitching on her face as she brushed off the accusations. Her hand was bleeding, yet she stubbornly held her position. Her companion quickly intervened, sharply scolding her for carelessly letting their power slip out, then turned and proposed a compromise to give Gash's contact details in exchange for his recruitment. Ignoring the tension, she simply turned around. For a moment, a sudden, empty smile and the announcement that she would find the strength within herself, leaving others stunned by her abrupt departure. She continued to walk away calmly and quietly threw over her shoulder that in time they themselves would understand how many talents they had driven away with their actions. Turning into the quiet room, she struck the table with her fist in despair and lamented that Gashu's true abilities and charm were still not visible to the public. She approached Gashu, raising the document, and demanded that he listen to her explanation of intentions, while he stood aside, confused and lost due to her sudden, passionate attention to him. Leaning over him too closely, she declared that she wanted to make him the best streamer in the world, and he withdrew embarrassedly, stepping back from her openly felt closeness. He is overwhelmed by discomfort. The woman stumbled and fell right onto him. Her face blazed with shame, and she apologized incessantly, insisting that she should move to the capital. The sudden closeness shocks him. His voice cuts into a scream from the unexpected touch, while he gathers his thoughts and comprehends what happened. In the midst of this tension, Roy enters the room seeking shelter from the sudden downpour and immediately sees the two in a too compromising pose. So he involuntarily wonders what kind of meeting this is. He tries to pull himself together, acknowledges that he understands the situation, and asks the woman to honestly explain her true intentions. Standing on the porch, Roy urges him to follow his own desires, hinting at the pressure of farm work and how the danger of monsters is growing in the village. His gaze involuntarily drifts into the distance as he repeatedly replays his own aspirations, and finally finds the strength to say aloud what he truly desires. In a moment, he asks Roy to escort the woman to the hotel, carefully watching as she proudly shows her now dry belongings. Before setting off further, he asks to borrow the documents for the night. He needs time to weigh the proposal on which his whole life depends. He stood in the open field and replayed the past in his mind. A flash of violence erupted after he first became a mercenary, and he was tormented by the thought that he would leave the village once again and bring only sorrow to those he left behind. Beside him, companions noted how palpable his presence was, and how much the peasants leaned towards him. Yet in their thoughts, each secretly hoped that he would seize the new opportunity presented to him. The conversation turned to that mysterious woman. One of the companions asked why she had appeared so suddenly, and he was simply reminded. Now the choice was entirely his. His face suddenly froze, and his gaze flashed with a painfully precise realization as soon as he looked at her. The weight of her words finally reached him. She lit up with gratitude, thanked him for the conversation, and immediately offered a festive banquet dinner in honor of the event, so for a moment he was bewildered by the abrupt change of plans. The village buzzed with a lively gathering. The residents brought out dragon meat from a recent hunt, and joyfully spreading their hands, invited the travelers to eat and drink in the spirit of shared joy. In the midst of the celebrations, he returned to his companion and suggested first explaining what was really happening, and only then moving on. Beneath the mountains, the village lay quietly, and did not even suspect the decisions that could overturn lives. They were already ripening somewhere within its bounds. With a heavy heart, he greets the morning, watching as a peasant from the doorstep of a nearby standing house waves his hand widely at him. She approaches with a bright smile full of hope. She clasps her hands together and asks if he has finally made a decision. He nods. He has reviewed all the necessary documents, and with sincere gratitude thanks for the information provided. His face involuntarily warms. He acknowledges the depth of her passion and the unwavering determination she has shown. Her eyes flash with joy as she cautiously begins to weave her reply, but the conversation is already derailing, not letting her finish. He cuts off feelings mid-word, clenches his jaw, and firmly states that he cannot force himself to leave the village. The sudden appearance of a colossal winged predator cuts off conversations as if the very air is suffocating. Its presence casts a shadow over their talk. He recognizes the beast, a dangerous species listed in the capital's registry. He draws his weapon and orders it to retreat, promising to end the conversation as soon as the threat is neutralized. He stares at the digital news feed and grows increasingly concerned. The frequency of dread wyvern appearances is rising. Comments pour in one after another. People ask why these creatures are so small and appear so often, and why this recurrence breaks the usual notions of dangerous beasts. Her eyes widen with disbelief as she stares at the screen, slowly grasping the reality of what is happening. The encounter with Edemaru the day before was already alarming, but this continuous wave of monsters in the village makes her doubt. Is their own home safe? The stream does not stop and the chat explodes with panic. On the screen is a huge, deadly creature that fills the entire frame. Viewers tremble aloud with fear, confirming the same thing. The village has become a hunting ground for dangerous species, and the village itself is mired in a growing nightmare. The wyvern dives down with a thunderous crash. Its gigantic body shakes the ground while a voice explains the creature's sharp claws and the need to stay away from its reach. He closely examines the monster, noticing it has no long-range attacks and its movements are too predictable. The skeptical voice immediately dismisses the idea that such a fight will be easy. Suddenly, a group of villagers rushes forward, shouting that they are ready to take on the threat, shocking viewers with their unexpected help. They declare the goal is to demonstrate the lessons learned over the past 6 months, and from the crowd echoes a mysterious cute voice asking where their new skill came from. When the wyvern charges forward, he warns them to be careful, but hearing their persistence, he decides to hold back and observe their abilities. With light fluidity, the villagers effortlessly dodge the wyvern's strikes, leaving it completely stunned by how much they have grown in such a short time. The battle intensifies as soon as they strike back, using unconventional tactics and forceful pressure to finish off the creature, which nearly goes deaf from the unexpected attack. They maintain a coordinated offensive, cornering the wyvern, and the onlookers can only marvel at who these peasants really are. He clenches his fist, and a smile spreads across his face as he watches the display of pure strength before him. The massive wyvern is completely subdued. It is surrounded by peasants who have taken full control of the fight. With a decisive strike, he drives the blade into the shell on the creature's neck, and shouts that tonight they will feast on roasted wyvern. He roars with laughter, celebrating the victory, while his companion freezes wide open, eyes reveal shock. As the dust settles, the crowd is swept by a wave of amazement. They whisper about the chance to become his apprentices and try to understand who this mysterious village really is. Barely catching his breath from the tension, he nods. The fight turned out to be much easier than he had imagined, and his companions still cannot believe the incredible skill of the peasants. He replays his past decisions in his mind and suddenly sees clearly. His previous refusal of the invitation was just a cowardly excuse to avoid the trial he truly fears. He towers before the group, halts their commotion with a single command, and is finally ready to voice the truth about his new, freshly found decision. He announces his intention to head to the royal capital, and his voice sounds confident, firm, already with new determination. She looks at him and can only quietly whisper his name with calm surprise. His words raise a wave of excitement in the audience. People flood the screen with messages of unwavering support for his upcoming journey. Grasping the warm charge of their feelings, he responds to them with a grateful nod, and this shared instant feeling brings their bond even closer. Before them stretched a quiet locality, a silent witness to all the life he leaves behind as he prepares for the road ahead. He is suddenly jerked by surprise when she shows. His broadcast is still active, she is streaming every one of his reactions to the whole world. Realizing he missed the moment, he returns to the device and throws the viewers a usual farewell, while they insist that he stay confident. He voices an ambitious plan to create a new streaming guild, and his excitement is clearly heard as he thanks his supporters for continuing to believe in him. As soon as the last word flies away, he turns back to her and together they take a step forward into the unknown, ready to start a new chapter. A lonely cart rolls along the road, and the passenger between the wheel strikes reflects on the very nature of the requested streams. The concept becomes clear. Registration in the Guild Association opens the possibility to accept streaming requests from searching for rare ingredients to deep dungeon raids. He sits next to his companion and focused, genuinely wonders, what prospects do these new opportunities open? She shifts the conversation to their planning and makes it clear that they will move forward with two specific ideas. Returning to him, she confirms his status and directly asks if he has officially registered as an adventurer. Her eyes flash with excitement as she suggests focusing on streams of conquest and exploration. He agrees, says that diversity is extremely important to avoid falling into monotony, and she laughs, saying that even a stream of conversations about vegetables can unexpectedly captivate. With a warm smile, he hands her the planning, clearly energized by the fact that they will soon release new joint content. He stands amid the bustling energy of the royal capital and gazes into the familiar, slightly nostalgic atmosphere as his new journey begins. Watching the crowd, he notes how popular current streamers are now, and separately highlights the high-ranking one among them, the one who holds the top spot in the viewer charts right now. Then the conversation shifts to a huge food competition broadcast throughout the city, promising a crazy prize 1 million gold, so it is the most discussed event in the capital. He politely declines the invitation to join the celebrations, preferring first to find a place to unload his gear and finally rest after the long road. A wave of self-reflection washes over him as soon as he recalls loneliness, and he begins to sort out in his mind how the fate of his former comrades has unfolded over these last 6 months. Suddenly, the scene tears us into the depths of an intermediate dungeon. A group of adventurers panics and flees from a monster. Hannah writhes at the moment the creature lunges forward, and the rear guard desperately convulsively breaks the defense against the insurmountable threat. Chaos is reflected in sharp digital feedback. Invisible critics mock the guild's failed attempts and the continuous change of its personnel. He stared at the screen, and a manic smile blossomed on his face as soon as he realized that the audience enjoys failure. Rumors about Gosh's departure only fueled his obsession with the spectacle of the struggle. Driven by sudden, desperate determination, he rushed like a whirlwind through the darkness of the dungeon, echoed through the corridors, and shouted that he would cast streams of submission to forge a new, more profitable trend. Meanwhile, in the bustling lobby of the Graham Guild Association, the receptionist greeted the arrivals with a friendly smile and handed them everything needed for the official registration of their new guild. They sat down at the table and froze, mindlessly scanning the lines of the registration form with their eyes until it finally dawned on them. They still hadn't decided on a name for their guild or a base of operations. The receptionist did not move and was not at all flustered. Her friendliness did not fade, so she simply asked them not to rush and to bring the completed form when everything was ready. While they, burdened with heavy thoughts, were sorting out this problem, a woman approached them, her eyes narrowed with curiosity, and she immediately interrupted their conversation to ask if they were who she had imagined them to be. Her face lit up with genuine admiration. She clasped her hands tightly together, showing that she was an avid fan of the recent Gashu broadcasts. She explained that she had seen his views suddenly spike, but her abrupt outburst drew the attention of Otherso. Embarrassed, she hurried to apologize as soon as she realized she had made a scene. She shines with unrestrained excitement and showers him with compliments, repeatedly rewatching his dream, causing him to noticeably become confused and blush from the unexpected praise. With her enthusiasm, she insists persistently. She is fully ready to support him, vigorously shaking his hand and pledging to help in every way she can. He admits that he has no base at all, so she asks if he has any specific places in mind for his new guild. She quickly slides a document across the counter, subconsciously hinting at the real estate she passionately recommends, and says that for a growing guild like his, it would be simply perfect. Both lean forward, eyes wide open, the feeling of anticipation gripping their throats as they study the details of the proposed location. She promises to start making arrangements immediately, invites them outside, and asks them to inspect the estate right away. For now, the charismatic host addresses his audience, introducing himself as the voice of a sweet girl from the Discovery Channel for impatient viewers. He sharply squints, and a cold calculation flashes in his gaze. It immediately becomes clear. He already has a special trick prepared to keep the quality of his broadcast higher than ever. She continues the broadcast and suddenly shifts her gaze to the blonde girl nearby, calling to her playfully in a flirtatious manner. The digital audience reacts instantly. The chat bursts into a wave of praise for her bold stance regarding that beautiful stranger. Without losing pace, she showers the girl with compliments, comparing her broadcast beauty to that of an angel or a fairy. The girl introduces herself as Missouri, and the streamer Weiss immediately drops all formalities. It is clear that he even likes the sound of this name itself. With a wrist movement, Wise pulls out a small card, trying to catch Missouri's attention while not disrupting his own plan. Missouri suddenly froze and fixed her gaze on the object held right before her eyes. For a moment, she was overwhelmed with astonishment. The card is an invitation to the luxurious Chartreuse restaurant, a famous establishment frequented by the renowned singer Melvis John, so Missouri looked completely bewildered. Weiss pressures her with words that refusing an invitation from an elder is a grave insult to the gods, effectively cornering her so that she has no choice for the entire day. But suddenly he finds himself face to face with a flamboyant newcomer who bursts into the conversation and accuses Weiss of being an old man who worships Missouri, while the crowd around quietly gossips about the scandalous nature of this meeting. She reacts with anxiety, warning that things are becoming dangerous. While he remains calm, his face reveals nothing. He extends his hand and calmly presses it into order. Everything is under control. The novice mocks his confidence, teases fear, while he holds his position and insists to resolve the conflict without violence in such a public place. Ignoring the plea for peace, the opponent boasts of his status as a B-class adventurer from the capital and suddenly lunges forward, but he is immediately met with a quick, decisive counterstrike, from which he crashes to the ground with a thud. The blow makes the opponent tremble with pain. His face is bloody and his bravado is shattered. Yet he still grits his teeth and tries to maintain his audacity. Frustrated that he cannot land a single hit, the opponent looks despairingly as his adversary moves with impeccable ease. The shock grows while the spectators watch this one-sided scene. He finally releases the brakes, silences the opponent's protests, and demands that he listen to common sense. Clearly, there is no patience left. He narrowed his eyes. The decision is made. There is no other way. Action remains. With a sharp final movement, he closed the distance. His fist struck the opponent's armor, and the blow vanished in the heat of power. The strike of the dragon hammer echoed in the air, and the opponent, exhausted, staggered and fell to the ground, confused and defeated. When the dust settled, he knelt beside the fallen man and made him breathe slowly, while simultaneously asking if he had hit too hard. Nearby, a woman looked at the scene and told everyone that their community was just a professional streaming guild, not the romantic story that others had already told. She emphasized the weapon used was only a replica, so no lasting harm was done to the opponent. Observing the consequences, the man with a friendly expression remarked that the opponent most likely hides behind his own speech to protect peace in the city and show his good intentions. Suddenly, the fallen travelers jerked to their feet, stammering apologies as soon as he realized he had missed something and panickedly rushed away. He watched the departure of the challenger, noticed the ticket left behind, and decided to simply return it during their next meeting. When the tension finally subsided, they sat together to share a meal and raised their mugs in a toast to the new cooperation. Between bites, she remembered that tomorrow she needed to go shopping to furnish her new apartment. Praising the quality of the real estate, he helped her negotiate for it. Suddenly, with a heavy groan, he realized they had completely missed the task to name their guild. One small detail which he still hoped for was no longer unresolved. She began throwing out grand, classically sounding options like Flames, Serpent of the Scorching Sky, although he apparently did not really believe in all that dramatic flair. Overwhelmed by the absurdity of the naming process, he collapsed exhausted onto the table, and she suggested instead that they focus on the food. She smiled and gently suggested not to rush. First, think everything over and find words according to the classic formula later. They exchanged looks full of understanding and finally relaxed, preparing to spend the rest of the evening. She sits next to her companion and shares excitement from their recent conversation about streaming, both clearly enjoying the light atmosphere of the meal. In a moment of vulnerability, she admits that she finds it hard to choose a name for their guild and says that only one thing inspired her. She looked at him, and his presence was both good and warm for her. Her eyes warm when she whispers one single expressive word, son. He is thrown into heat by the unexpected depth of her gaze. The comparison hits too close, but he still sincerely thanks. He pauses for a moment at her reaction. She freezes and looks at him full of misunderstanding, so he has to awkwardly admit how much her words weigh. The tension breaks her too. With a bright smile, she offers a new, more precise name, Golden Sun. When the decision was finally made, they returned to their companion and raised their glasses, proposing a toast to mark the beginning of their bright future. Everything around the table is covered with Mugsa's silent proof of friendship and anticipation of a new shared chapter. He stood up and announced that he intended to pay and grab himself a drink, although his companion urged him to stay and continue the conversation. Turning back to the table, he apologized for the delay. A mixture of gratitude and anxiety flashed across his face how his companion was feeling. She seemed completely exhausted. Her head lay heavily on the table, and she herself had fallen into a deep, peaceful sleep. Carrying her in his arms, he reached the inn and immediately encountered bad news. There was not a single free spot for the entire night. He fought for his justification, and after a few moments of hesitation, the innkeeper finally gave in, made a special exception for his companion. When he laid her on the bed, he was enlightened. There was only one bedroom in the room, so they suddenly found themselves in a hopeless situation. Asuras stands over the sleeping girl, and his heart pounds wildly as if it fills the entire room. His hand trembles as he thinks about the moment so close. He leans forward. The air around them seems to change as he shortens the distance and approaches her motionless body. The adventurer struggles with his own conscience. He asks himself if he has truly lost all caution when he suddenly finds himself in her embrace. In this silence, he remains locked in that homestead, while his thoughts wildly race under the weight of what has happened. He breaks out in a cold sweat. In panic, he begins to tell himself to calm down, stunned that the older man ended up in such a situation with a young girl. The girl stirs, a faint, soft smile on her lips as she quietly mumbles about a flood of comments, as if unaware of the tension thickening in the room. He steps back to the edge of the bed. The floor creaks under his weight, and he watches as she continues to sleep evenly and peacefully. When the morning light seeps through the windows, the birdsong announces the start of a new day, and she slowly rises from sleep. He silently watches from the shadows as the girl tosses, clutches her head, and groans. The effects of her intoxication still linger. She blinks, looks around confusedly, and calls for Gasha, but sees he is sitting very close. His presence unsettles her, and she opens her eyes wide, finally understanding everything. Feeling someone's approach nearby, she suddenly sits up on the bed. Her heart races as he, keeping calm, greets her in the morning. Choked with shame, she bows deeply and endlessly apologizes for the troubles she caused. He tries to dismiss her concern, but she stubbornly insists, fearful, focused on one thought, that rest should be more important to him than guild bureaucracy. For now, the streamer is negotiating with the guild workers, clarifying which type of broadcasting is allowed in their location. She presents an application for dungeon exploration and immediately makes it clear she has a specific request regarding the location. The guild representative hesitates and warns, obtaining permission for such a platform for a newly created guild is incredibly difficult, but the streamer is still stubbornly determined to make a strong impression. She insisted on one last request, asked to convey a specific demand to the guild president. The conversation shifted to the outskirts of Graham, where the residents of Misery stayed. She explained that moving was a tolerable matter. She lived only with her older sister, who often went to work. He immediately noticed the similarity of their circumstances. Both lived independently and shared a passion for broadcasting. Their eyes stuck to the wall, richly covered with notes and diagrams, and she proudly declared that this was their roadmap to success. For a moment, they believed in optimism, imagining how soon they would reach the heights of their own mastery. He admitted that he wanted to become stronger by following her broadcasts, and barely swaying from the giant sword, he eventually succeeded. She agreed to train with the rapier. With new determination, they stood in front of the building and solemnly declared it their new base for operations. She inspects the new base, admires the spacious yard and the large dining hall, noting how the perfectly designed space suits their agricultural ambitions. She cannot take her eyes off the scale of the new headquarters. The spacious rooms are breathtaking. She quickly shifts the conversation to practice how to arrange the equipment and settles into the private rooms with her companion. Then they switch to Roy. He takes on the administrative work and confirms that he has mastered the basics of managing the dormitory and office premises for the next 3 days. Roy raises the latest events. He says that Masiri-san informed him an A-rank adventurer has arrived to specifically carry out assignments involving monster taming. While they were discussing the strange increase in the number of monsters, a creaking violin creaked from the door. They all shuddered, and their gazes were once again fixed on the unexpected interruption. She appears wrapped in a towel after the shower and excitedly announces, "They have received official permission to explore the S-rank dungeon." Roy immediately becomes noticeably embarrassed. He abruptly turns away, embarrassed by her lack of clothing, while she panics and rushes away, and he is overwhelmed by the sudden intimacy of what just happened. In a moment, they come together again at the table to sort out the strategic consequences of the S-rank dungeon permit, while she is busy laying out the plan for the broadcast with a large blind spot ahead. She emphasizes, to survive, they need a project that will capture the public's imagination. She says the world is now obsessed with streaming, so you have to stand out to secure the necessary funding. A loud figure laughs, admitting, "Many guilds senselessly cause trouble for the sake of glory, but this is definitely not their style." She nods and insists further, their strategy relies on safe and pleasant content. Gashu confirms this with a careful nod. When she asks if there is a deeper reason for his dedication to streaming, he answers without hesitation. Yes, it is indeed a matter of great importance. Then he changes the subject and asks if she knows a streamer named Melvis. She immediately confirms, yes, she knows him. Gashu plunges into memories how once his comrades left him behind right at the start, when he arrived at the Adventurers Guild, and how he suffered from a lack of orders. Because in team tasks of monster taming he was simply ignored. So he turned away from that life and reoriented himself to the streaming guild. The conversation breaks off when an adventurer from Blazing Serpent Guild approaches closer and says he wants to cooperate in monster clearings. She continued to enchant him through the screen. Her presence was a beacon of light in his darkest days of grief and exhausting, boring work. Her voice sharply cut through the silence of his room and pinned his wandering thoughts to one place. He froze enchanted while she performed with ethereal grace, as if already crossing the boundaries of digital media. Day by day he found solace in her streams, and over time he realized, he wants to become the same to give others the same warmth. Despite the first attempts to connect himself with failure, he did not give up and stubbornly continued to seek that same thread of connection. She confessed that she passionately desires to highlight others' brightness, and that his appearance became the impetus that returned her sense to bring this charm to the world. The next day tension hung in the air. She teased him about noticeable anxiety and demanded that he calm his nerves before the stream. With a decisive click she launched the stream, finally inviting him to step onto the stage beside her. She shines into the camera and introduces herself along with her partner, Gashu, as they officially launch the new streaming guild Golden Sun. The chat interface explodes with activity. Thousands of viewers connect and many leave messages with interest new faces, and some recognize the traveler. Seeing the viewer counter soar rapidly, she stammers in surprise and exclaims that their debut turned out to be much more successful than the usual start for a new channel. Trying not to lose focus, she unfolds a banner with their guild's slogan, and Gasha tries to steer the conversation back to their planned presentation. With pomp she raises the flag up, but suddenly does not notice that she is holding it completely upside down. In response, the viewers immediately latch onto the blunder. Their stunned silence floods the chat and the inverted text becomes the main topic. Realizing her mistake, she blushes with shame and immediately apologizes, and Gasha points out the slip so she can fix everything. Finally, holding the banner properly, Gasha confidently announces the mission to bring smiles to everyone and strive for the top of the streaming world. He watched as the rapid chat was overwhelmed with viewers' suggestions. From requests for guides on the Great Sword to bold challenges, take on the A-rank dungeon immediately and handle it. Switching to the next broadcast, he honestly admitted, it will be difficult ahead, and he perfectly understood the path they chose promises nothing easy. The next day they reached the main gates of Graham, where they were met by two guides. Oberyn Sigurd, who for the first time during the very first stream expressed doubt about their decision to enter the S-rank dungeon. He brushed off the guide's remark with a confident smile and reminded, No matter how it looks, they possess the skills of S-rank and A-rank adventurers. Under the pressure of strict rules, he learned the main point. High-ranking adventurers must personally oversee their entrance, and to enter the dungeon, a special key is required. After all the formalities, he nodded to the group, "Move forward." And he himself impatiently prepared to wait until the path finally led them into the very depths. Soon they reached the radiant, mystical entrance to the S-rank dungeon Blue Crystal Cave. He lifted the necessary key, and his gaze hardened as he prepared to unlock the path ahead. He inserts the key, and a dazzling flash breaks the ancient seal that had guarded the dungeon entrance for centuries. The man waves his hand toward the darkness and the bottomless abyss, cutting the threshold's view, signaling. The path is now open, and they may proceed. He listens as the guide coldly clarifies the conditions. If they die, support will simply turn back, but if the squad reaches the deepest levels, they will take everything left behind. Nearby, spectators whisper in shock, not understanding how some C-rank adventurer managed to get permission to explore such a dangerous place at all. They watch, and anxiety grows as two continue moving forward, convinced that this reckless stunt will inevitably lead them to death. But one of the observers, as if hooked, freezes in shock before his own broadcasting device, recalling rumors that this very traveler single-handedly defeated 5 flame dragons. He catches skeptical glances from passers-by, a cunning smile flashes and fades on his lips, as he is about to show them exactly what he is capable of. His companion does not lag behind a step. Closely beside him, he confidently moves deeper into the dungeon, as if he already knows how he will prove his worth to everyone. The broadcast begins. The streamer greets the audience, announces that they have arrived at Blue Crystal Caves, and the number of viewers rapidly soars to 20,000. When the pressure of the live broadcast rises, the adventure notes dryly record a shocking figure. A huge number of people are simultaneously following their progress. They are suddenly covered by a pack of wolves, and the streamer, without blinking, calls them dangerous class A, much higher than the classification they started with. She whispers words of support to him while he draws his blade, recalling past experience with similar beasts to finally gather himself and calm down. Their gazes collide for just a moment, and in this silence a silent understanding is born. The full weight of what is happening now is read in the focused expressions on their faces. He measures with his thoughts the surreal nature of what he has experienced. Seeing everything with his own eyes feels deeper than watching through a screen. She encourages him to trust his own abilities and confidently assures him his true strength is enough to cope with this threat. Gathering determination within himself, he stands his ground against the pressing pack and is ready to face the source of the 4 gods. He rushed forward with a blinding strike. The blade sliced through the air and scattered the pack of wolves with one final move. When the dust settled, the streamer exploded with joy over his victory, and she, marveling at the mysterious technique he had just shown, called it an ancient martial art, 4 gods. The mesmerized viewers froze in stunned silence, noticing such a trick should be impossible for anyone except the Beastman race. He scratched the back of his head and said he just came across a training video while looking for morning exercises. Since he repeated these movements daily for his own health, the technique eventually mastered him involuntarily. Those who watched the live broadcast exploded with disbelief. Many wrote that even their elders were unable to repeat such a trick, so they called it genius. Meanwhile, the conversation sharply changed. Their jabs came one after another, hinting that he should be honest about his own abilities and perhaps take up more formal activities. The streamer again shifted her gaze to the audience, promised even more adrenaline, and ordered not to leave. The next display of skill would follow. She suggests a short break, weighing how many monsters they have already managed to defeat. He pauses, assesses their progress, and confirms 2/3 of the way remains until the end of the dungeon. Their attention slides to an unmarked room 1 that is not on their map. Entering the chamber, they find a treasure chest. Such caches are common. She notes, the report of findings serves as an official record so they can take them without breaking the rules. Inside the chest, they find a jar with glowing creatures, and she recognizes them as fulguri. She explains that these are a type of fae capable of providing illumination, as the creatures emit a soft, magical light. He smiles, showing full confidence in her skill as they continue their journey. She watches as a small glowing fairy tremulously floats away, and on her face is a quiet, attentive admiration. She observes the party as they make their way through the darkness, and admits, it was naive to underestimate the gloom of the unpunished dungeon, especially without a proper lantern. Suddenly, a giant swarm of steel bats bursts out of the darkness, and they realize that maneuvering a large sword in such tight conditions will be incredibly difficult. He shouts for her to stay away. The air immediately fills with the roar of flapping wings. Urgently asks direct the light onto his hand to help him defend himself. When the light converges into a single point, he prepares to unleash a technique called Origin of the Four Gods. The blade tears forward with impossible speed, slicing through the air and scattering fragments like water over dead leaves. Witnesses only catch their breath, stunned by his combat skill. She grabs the moment and launches a rapid-fire commentary, chewing over all the nuances of his movements for her audience while he is locked in a fierce battle. Until she delivers an exciting report from the scene, she breaks down his complex sequence of strikes, downward, diagonal, and upward, marveling each time at how he pulls off such maneuvers with heavy weapons. Her loud remarks during the life-or-death clash cruelly humiliate him, and in panic he drags her away, forcing her to escape. She confidently pushes through the swarm. The blade cuts the air with rhythmic precision as steel bats fall around. Then the commentator falls silent, irritated by the pause in explanations, while the crowd erupts in applause and praises her unexpected combat skill. Due to the harshness of the clash, the swordsmen insist on retreat, saying the situation is too dangerous, but she dismisses these warnings with unwavering confidence. She points to the growing number of spectators, and her excitement sparkles as she reminds them. Their training prepared her exactly for this kind of pressure. He grips his gear even tighter, his joints whitening under the squeeze of his fingers, and his voice emphasizes a simple truth. The main thing is collective safety above all. The warrior looks at her sternly and insists he cannot allow any injuries. She responds with a calming, though condescending smile. She cannot hold back laughter. The amusement at what is happening is now impossible to hide, while the group continues to push forward, leaving the chaos of battle behind. They finally reach the threshold of the deepest part of the cave. Ahead lies a creepy, crystal-clear silence. She closely watches the comment feed and, mixing irritation with cold calculation, states, "The current viewer rating has hit a dead end in second place, and the chat is already guessing who the competitor is." Taking a step forward, she and her companions stop under a huge, formidable arch, the very entrance to the deepest labyrinths of the cave. Darkness recedes, and an incredible scene unfolds before their eyes. A tunnel covered with giant bright crystals that illuminate the path ahead from the complete darkness. Running her gaze over the crystalline formations, she notes how incredibly beautiful it is around, and already calculates how this unique panorama will boost her popularity among viewers. Just then their progress is sharply torn by a low, guttural growl. A creature curled in the shadows releases flashes of flame flickering around its body. They freeze for a moment. They recognize the beast, a flame dragon. From its presence spreads scorching, suffocating heat, like a heat that clings to the skin. Ignoring the danger, she addresses her viewers, calming them. The dragon does not threaten her companion, and at the same time brushes off his fears that he might be recognized as a dangerous monster. Despite the doubt in her companion's voice, she still orders to finish off the creature, which shows not a drop of aggression. The spectacle for her viewers weighs more than any hesitation. She closely watches the beast and notices a strange blue tint in its flames and an unnatural swelling of its neck. This breaks her first assumption that such a thing only reflects in the crystals. As soon as the creature blinks, she sharply and loudly shouts to her companion to retreat. She felt the immediate danger posed by the awakening predator. The dragon lets out a deafening roar, and it becomes clear to them. Their intrusion has awakened a creature far more terrifying than an ordinary flame dragon. It rises to its feet, coils its body in rings, and covers them with scorching heat as realization strikes. Before them is a rare and deadly dangerous species. He freezes in disbelief, trying to process the consequences of encountering such an unknown, undocumented specimen. They analyze the creature's physiology. Its structure truly mimics a familiar species, but its ecology is fundamentally different. One confirmation: this is a discovery never before recorded. And yet, despite the looming mortal threat, she dismisses the danger with chilling indifference, and her companion remains frozen, stunned by her complete lack of concern. Asura stands ready, the great sword firmly grasped, and his gaze carefully tracks the creature. His movements mimic the fiery dragon, but caution awaits a clear sign of its true nature. He calls Missouri and orders to stay away, while the beast rushes forward with a low, rumbling roar that shakes the ground. The beast releases a stream of fire, but immediately notices that the range of the breath is limited, so it calmly maintains its defensive stance. He is increasingly frightened. The flame shows no sign of dying down, and the continuous heat forces him to remain on the highest alert. Examining the anatomy of the monster, he concludes, it has a special organ that allows it to breathe fire continuously without pauses for inhaling. He makes a daring maneuver, throws his large sword blade through the air like a boomerang, a technique that clearly leaves Missouri stunned by the skill. The weapon draws an arc in the air, and as soon as it does not return immediately, the creature prepares to strike back with a new, even greater force. Missouri shouts for him to close his Isen just as the blinding flash tears through the silence. He is ready to seize the chance created by the distraction. He strikes without hesitation. The blade cuts through the air, intercepts the beast at the moment of the lunging, the threat disappears. After defeating the monster, he shares a moment of triumph with his comrade. Their successful teamwork is recorded for the viewers. She recalls how crazy the battle was, admits her own carelessness, and at the same time with relief says that their first broadcast ended safely. He turns to her and sincerely thanks her for the support that made their victory possible. The conversation changes course as soon as he mentions the creature's behavior and allows doubt to creep in. Does she have the same unique ability to speak with such creatures? She easily brushes off the very thought with a single gesture, cutting off the explanation, saying that this is by no means like a real conversation. He continues slowly, thoughtfully laying out his idea. The desire to spread STEM was born from the realization that this creature is alive, a living being that feels. She looks at him, and it is clear how truly moved she is by his unexpected depth and compassion for their fallen enemy. She stares at the trembling lights and reflects, how few people see in fairies anything more than just tools for magic. Suddenly, she is overwhelmed by a burst of enthusiasm. She reaches out and declares that she wants to be kinder to the spirits, because their presence is the reason these broadcasts are even possible. He watches her and his face warms as he agrees. Her happiness is truly contagious. Without a word of warning, he picks her up in his arms and rushes into battle while the space around them begins to crack and collapse. He carries her away from the fragile crystalline structures that are falling apart. His movements are precise, steady, without any unnecessary fuss. Suddenly she catches her breath, her cheeks flush as she realizes how close he is, and she quickly insists she is fine. He places her against the wall of crystals and ponders. Wouldn't it be better to simply cut through it with a blade, rather than circumvent the obstacle? She thanks him for the help, and he replies that he only needs a moment to gather the necessary strength and clear the path ahead. He squeezed her even tighter, and his gaze locked onto hers. The ground beneath them trembled wildly. A gigantic crystalline threat was breaking through from below. Before them emerged a creature, a sturdy crystalline golem, radiating an ancient and dangerous aura, making them realize ordinary steel would not help against such an enemy. Nearby, companions hurried, trying to catch up, shouting warnings about the terrible situation, but they already feared that the entrance would vanish under the pressure of the impending destruction. He shifted his gaze to his ally and urged, let him unleash fully without any hesitation. Understanding struck him immediately. They were trapped, and as long as the golem stood in their way, there was no time to carve a path for retreat. He glanced at the blade and thoughts whirled around the impossible dilemma. How to catch the monster in battle and at the same time guarantee her safety. She stepped forward, her hands trembled as she declared her intention to fight, and refused to be a burden to those nearby. He saw her resolve strengthen. He understood that she was afraid, yet she still decided to draw the golem's attention, so now he had to weigh the risks of her dangerous plan. He watched as the massive, torn fist of the golem slammed into the ground, shaking the cave floor with tremors. The adventurer shouted to his companions, ordering them to dodge the blows, and prioritize survival over reckless aggression while the crystalline behemoth hovered above them. He tensed to the limit, held the shield high, and just then the heavy hand of the golem crashed into his defense with a dull, devastating collision. He tried to withstand the colossal force, gritted his teeth and felt his boots sliding backward on the stone while an ally called out with concern. She realized the key to their survival and shouted a warning. The life force of the golem was held in a single hidden core within its crystalline structure. He fixed his gaze on the flickering eye embedded in the creature's mass, and recognizing the target, lunged forward to deliver a precise strike. In an instant, performing an acrobatic trick, he rolled under the reach limit of the golems, barely slipping away from a deadly blow, then took a convenient position for a counterattack. The blade solemnly clanged on contact and the surface crumbled, but as the dust settled, fear grew, the eye disappeared from sight. He clenched inside as the massive golem shifted. Its fiery core slid over the rocky surface, dodging his strike. After the miss, he reassured his companion that everything was safe, and said he had barely managed to scratch the creature's defense. Watching the clash, spectators questioned the effectiveness of the expulsion stream technique, openly doubting the traveler's capability. Seeing the homunculus preparing another assault, he urged his partner on, demanded not to stop and warned that standing still meant death. She suggested he use his powerful destructive technique, but he admitted defeat and explained that his previous attempts had left no trace. He complained even more about the tactical disadvantage, saying that his maneuver had disrupted its aiming and he had no time to charge his power. She calculated the logistics, whether she could keep her eye long enough for him to unleash his full strength. With renewed determination, she declared her allegiance to Golden Suny, urging them to unite to ensure survival. She stood before him, and her presence suddenly triggered a quiet, clear insight in his mind. He looked into his own flaws and admitted, his obsession with protecting her blinded him. He did not see the true extent of her capabilities. Their hands touched briefly, firmly, like a silent agreement between them. Suddenly realizing this clearly, he turned to her and asked for help, acknowledging, without her, they could not move forward or overcome the obstacle. She voiced a bold plan. She would approach the monster up close herself, and he was to deliver the decisive blow as soon as she restrained its movement. He accepted the strategy with a confident grin, fully ready to deliver the final strike. As soon as the plan activated, they dashed forward in perfect synchrony, closing the distance to the mobile homunculus golem to put the plan into action. A huge dark creature looms over the battlefield. The earth trembles from its mere presence, while the warrior prepares to strike in the name of true martial art. She barely avoids the devastating blow, and her focus sharpens until she gathers herself to direct the power of Gosh straight into the creature's eye. Because spirits cannot strike directly under the impact of a sudden blinding flash attack, the ground cracks. The warrior freezes in disbelief as the creature reveals a third limb. His shock only grows as he realizes the suffering is already caught in the newly appeared one. She sighed with relief after narrowly avoiding a strike. Quickly pulling herself together, she directs the creature's attention onto herself. With a sharp and precise movement, she launches a projectile. It flies through the air in a swift streak straight toward the target. The shot hits. The projectile lands right on the creature's eye, and the impact raises such a roar that there is no longer any doubt. She examines the creature's core and notices, even if she buries herself, the trail left by Gashu makes her location impossible to hide. Looking ahead without any hesitation, she prepares to strike weapon in a steady grip, and words about the decisive moment are spoken. Moving with unnatural grace, she circles around the spirit. Blades flash and strikes fall to her own rhythm, which the creature reproduces. He shouts a command, focus on the creature's crown. His voice cuts through the tension as she prepares the next move. In perfect synchronization, they move forward together, rushing ahead and delivering a devastating blow. He channels the power of the four divine gardens and unleashes the ultimate secret technique. A wave bursts with dazzling light. The strike lands with destructive force. The blade cuts through the spirit's defense, and the Sting Chuan Wu technique comes into play. As the ground trembles from the impact, he looks at the aftermath, acknowledging the colossal power of the great sword technique. He stands amid the ruins after the battle and watches as his comrade celebrates the victory with a smile before an enthralled audience. Her voice trembled with joy as she thanked for the flood of positive comments. She again focuses on the broadcast and ends the stream with a gentle smile. While he remains nearby, it is clear he is relaxing. The dangerous expedition to Azure Crystal Cave ended without new incidents. Nearby, a familiar person approaches. He voices sincere disbelief at how they managed to defeat the formidable crystal golem. His voice carries shock and reluctant respect mixed together. He confidently gestures to his partner and proudly declares that their joint strength is the true key to success. The tension disappears from his face, and he is overwhelmed by a sense of new achievement. The novice, hearing his current rank, demonstratively becomes confused. He does not understand why a person with his demonstrated abilities is still stuck at sea, but he dismisses this very thought pure nonsense, sheer absurdity. She twitches from the criticism. Rage rises like a wave, and she sharply replies that their journey from the flame serpent from the burning sky was exhausting. She suggests that perhaps the too harsh standards of the major guilds simply do not suit them. He listens carefully to the advice and nods when it is suggested to take a promotion exam upon returning. He understands well that further training will be needed for advancement. The conversation abruptly shifts. The acquaintance brushes off their hard-won victory and shamelessly insists that success in the dungeon was just a coincidence, pure luck. She listens as the critic coldly dismisses their efforts, saying that due to lack of knowledge and experience they are no better than an average person. The group stands in the cave, and the heavy burden of his harsh words hangs in the air while everyone processes the painful reprimand. He admits his own fault and confesses. It was he who insisted on the overly difficult trial, even though they were not properly prepared. He lowers his gaze to his own hands and thinks how easily they could have died. He realizes, brute force alone is not enough to conquer such dangerous depths. He throws a quiet and gloomy apology to his companions. The weight of their almost fatal mistake heavily presses on his conscience. The critic gives a creepy smile and declares, their death will be just a minor inconvenience for everyone. He sharply changes his tone, demanding that they continue to entertain him, and admits, Despite his aversion to streams, he has indeed developed a lively interest in their guild affairs. The tension eases as soon as they shift their attention to the fallen flame dragon casually discussing what its meat is good for. They prepare to record materials. She hosts the broadcast from the Golden Sun Guild dormitory, eagerly wanting to share the freshest updates with the viewers. With infectious energy, she talks about the guild's rapid rise. Supposedly, the highest audience has already surpassed 100,000, and fan registrations have jumped above 80,000. Her companion agrees. The feat is truly impressive, but he will still brush off any awkwardness saying his voice was broadcast to such a huge crowd. He notices how quickly his friend gets fired up, and she, burning with excitement, predicts the next dream will break records and reach 1 million simultaneous viewers. She lays her head on the table and exhales with relief, admitting how long she had been searching for this very moment. He pours another glass, sinks into the silence, and listens while she prepares to talk about her past, yet he is still surprised to learn that she has a story she has not yet told. She begins her story with a childhood memory. 10 years ago near the Graham Highway, she secretly followed her parents in their carriage, but she slipped and fell, after which they left her behind. Around her is complete wild wilderness, and in this solitude she sadly realizes she should have learned the communication spell to call for help. In a fit of hysteria, she screams in terror as the fierce beast lunges at her, its jaws snap open right before her eyes. The monster bites into its prey and the crunch echoes so sharply it sends chills down the skin. At the peak of the clash, a comrade intervenes and shouts, checking if she is unharmed. He drives the blade deep into the monster, forcing it to release its grip. Blood splatters across the entire field. When the beast falls, he suddenly realizes how serious everything is and calls out in distress, as the tension of the fight begins to ease. A flash of past memories passes through her eyes. A younger version of herself reunites with her parents after a traumatic separation. She pours out all the bitterness that has long been inside, and accuses them of always abandoning her and her sister. Returning to the present, her companion urges her, forcing her to move and insisting they must report the incident to the association to claim their reward. She listens carefully to the traveler, who tells about his former search for a young girl named Misery, and honestly admits his attempts to find her in the guild in Graham yielded nothing, simply lacking concrete information. Absorbing every word, she feels a warm wave of pride. The one she once saved has grown into a truly wonderful person, even though the circumstances of her past deeds turned into a harsh reprimand for her. He wipes a tear from his eye, visibly moved by such news, and she playfully announces the latest urgent news to the room. The broadcast screen literally explodes with joy. Viewer counts soar rapidly, and Melvish Channel immediately leaps to first place, leaving competitors far behind. When the numbers exceed 1 million, he acknowledges the colossal scale of her success. Yet she still remains modest, only noting that their advantage is already under threat. She casually drops a phrase about her sister's genius, and it stuns him into silence. He stammers, trying with a trembling voice to comprehend the unexpected news. She, wearing a calm, confident smile, confirms the truth. Melvis is indeed her older sister, she just hadn't said a word about it until this very moment. The revelation hits as if physically struck. His eyes widen sharply in shock as he realizes that her connection to the famous creator will have consequences. His composure crumbles to dust. He freezes in stunned silence while she talks about her sister's influence, about those songs and that presence that reached countless people worldwide, bringing her genuine joy. She picks up with renewed enthusiasm. Working together with him, she will finally be able to expand boundaries and try something new to bring fresh inspiration to their guilds. The sudden surge of energy vanished as quickly as it came. She collapsed in place, exhausted, and immediately fell into a deep, even sleep. He watched her as the quiet, prolonged creaking of the floor occasionally pierced the silence, and he replayed her words in his mind about revitalizing their shared path. Standing by the window, he looked outside and weighed the future of their exploration streams, but the conclusion was harsh. If nothing changes, they will repeatedly fall back into the same stagnant cycle. A sharp memory suddenly surfaced within him like a reproach. Their recent success in the dungeon proves nothing, as it was pure luck. He turned away from the window, and a new resolve thickened inside him. He firmly understood, to truly help the guild, he must raise his own level. Clenching his fist, he stared into the distance, fully focused on the first step of his journey, preparing to take the level-up exam for an adventurer. The adventurous farmer directs his determination towards the upcoming exam for promotion in the beer rank, stubbornly convincing himself only exhausting preparation leads to success. He pours the drink, and in his head are the heavy preparations necessary for the test, relentlessly taking all his thoughts. Suddenly he breaks down and collapses in a heap from powerless irritation. The uncertainty overwhelms him about how exactly to prepare for the upcoming trial. Seeing his suffering, the companion checks if he is okay and asks directly. He weakly replies that he is somehow holding on. She suggests looking at strategies from streams, saying that there are exactly the hints needed, and lays out a guide before him, so he can orient himself to the exam requirements. He pours out his anxiety about the written part of the exam, and she gently picks it up, offering to help with studying so that he will be ready. They take on a strict study plan, step by step, methodically going through each numbered lesson until the material is mastered. Finally, the day of the promotion exam arrives. She encourages him as he walks towards his fate. He arrived at the venue, not yet knowing that a woman who had long been waiting was watching his every move closely just to see his new challenge live. She clenched her fist, a quiet gesture of support, and decided, it's time to move forward. Now let it go together with his face. As soon as he stepped through the gates of the Birang promotion exam location, he found himself at the very epicenter of a wave of ambitious young adventurers. The sea of feathers so sharply opened in him a feeling of being an outsider that he literally felt the weight of their collective gaze directed at him. When he was recognized, a whisper ran through the crowd, and people began to argue whether it was worth approaching the man known for his huge greatsword. One of the spectators stepped forward, extended his hand, and greeted him. He was full of admiration for the recently witnessed events and the flood of impressions. The stranger introduced himself as Zohio and admitted he was also a newcomer who came for the first time on the advice of the guildmaster. Two men stood nearby, and an official order echoed through the courtyard. All candidates must surrender, lay down their weapons, and hand over their belongings before the exam begins. He exchanged a determined nod with his new companion. Both agreed to put all their effort into the exam, as the orders demanded. As soon as the written excerpt began, he realized with a relief that almost overwhelmed him. The questions matched the practical tasks he had studied, and nearby an observer was carefully watching his progress. He stared intently at the paper, and the pen slid wildly fast across the page as he filled in the answer fields with new confidence. The observer, noticing his sudden speed and dexterity, asked if he was resorting to forbidden methods to pass the test so quickly. Removing the accusation from the tale, he shifted his gaze to the next stage, physical training, where candidates paired up for strength, running, and endurance tests. He agreed without hesitation to the invitation to team up with a partner. He had no idea that the partner was plotting a treacherous plan to sabotage his performance. During push-ups and a squat, he held his legs uncertainly and too weakly. The signal to start sounded, and he immediately threw himself into the work, tensing his muscles to maintain a steady rhythm. He was shaking from unexpected instability. He felt intense pressure that could easily throw off his balance, while his partner deliberately did not provide reliable support. He stares intently at his partner, his face tensing with irritation as the latter fails the test right before his eyes due to blatant sabotage. He nearly botched the physical test. The tension eases as soon as the partner makes clumsy apologies. His abrupt movement throws off the rhythm, and the strike comes out sharp, as if he was slammed into a wall. The medical staff rushes swiftly to the spot, their hands glowing with restorative energy as they tend to the wounded and carefully examine them. When he regains consciousness again, the medics inform him the strength test is over, and if he is able, he must proceed to the running test. The partner throws an empty compliment at his fighting spirit and immediately turns away to prepare for the next phase. He was shaken when he saw the same individual approaching him again, just at the moment when the elders announced that the running test would be conducted in groups of 5. Despite the obvious danger, he stubbornly continues because he knows, if he stops even once, he will be immediately disqualified. He takes his place at the starting line. His body aches, but his determination only grows stronger as the signal to start is given. With a burst, he leaps forward with maximum concentration. His speed throws the competitors off pace as he pushes through the physical pain. Next comes the following test, and he prepares himself for the jumping part of the exam. With a powerful jump, he effortlessly clears the obstacle and the rest of the crowd freezes, impressed by his athletic skill. A whisper rises like a hum in the crowd. People are shocked, unable to believe it, trying to understand whether it is his obsession or pure, unparalleled talent that elevates his incredible performance. The group is gathered for an endurance test. They are ordered to run 100 laps around the track. When the race starts, Zohio immediately stumbles, tripping over hidden protrusions scattered underfoot. Next, the focus shifts to the martial arts test. Candidates must demonstrate their skill in various types of weapons or hand-to-hand combat. He steps forward and asks about the evaluation criteria, directly inquiring whether using multiple types of weapons provides additional advantages. He shows his mastery, smoothly transitioning from sword to hammer, then to spears, axes, and dagger, leaving the examiner stunned by his versatility. The number of fans grows, he continues to remain modest, although the fans' attention to his unique martial arts style is clearly increasing. The air nearby seems to change. A solitary figure sits in the dining hall while a crowd buzzes around. From a distance, the opponent recognizes him as the cursed god of plague, with deep resentment and fear of the guild leader's reaction to this endless turmoil. Tension releases the throat while the medical team rushes past, hurrying to the subjugation test site, drawing curious glances from everyone around. They carry the fallen candidate on a stretcher, a grim hint at the harsh consequences awaiting anyone who fails the trial. Unmoved by this spectacle, he confirms his readiness as soon as he is called, and steps forward to properly prepare his equipment for the next stage. He approaches the grand gates of the conquest test, site where the final trial awaits him under the watchful eyes of VIPs. He stands before the examiners, and they, snapping with sharp remarks about their age and the upcoming display of the great candidate holding a sword. The president of the Guild Association, Kate Allman, criticized the attire of the head of the Adventurers Association. So start Brima's, and he laughed at the jab, deflecting it with a burst of energy. They turn their attention to Obel, thank him for previous support, and immediately acknowledge the intrigue he adds to the course of events. He steps onto the arena and immediately causes confusion among the spectators who notice his signature weapon is missing. The examiners are stunned. He intends to face the trial with bare hands to test his abilities without resorting to lethal force against monsters. He contemplates his own change of perspective and realizes bare swordsmanship is not enough now. He must apply the knowledge gained during training to exploit the specific traits of his opponents. He confesses to his companion his uncertainty. Despite the bold statement, anxiety still gnaws at him. Will the new tactical approach work? She gives him a calming smile, and within him is found firmness. He nods to himself, urging away fear and preparing for the trials ahead. He watches intently at the arena gates until they open and release the trial. Randomized syringe threats, a mushroom, a poisonous amoeba, and a horde of goblins. Looking around in place, he calmly, focusedly nods as if accepting the challenge. The signal sounds and he immediately enters the slow mycelium, approaching with practiced precision. He knows the mushroom releases toxic spores as soon as you get close, so he swings it sharply, dispersing the danger in the air. Since poison amoeba cannot be harmed by physical blows, it uses the wind pressure from its own swing to blow its jelly-like body away, and it, rolling, rushes across the floor. Next, he shifts his attention to the goblin. These creatures are dangerous when they gather in groups or hide, but they are easy to tame if left alone in an open place. With a sharp exclamation, he delivers a powerful blow with the dragon hammer directly on the goblin, and it is instantly neutralized. From the observation deck, the examiners watch him, and with every second their interest only grows, while he confidently celebrates a successful strategy with a 1 grant. He stands in the middle of the arena, and suddenly his attention is caught by the dull, heavy clatter of boots. The sound drags along the ground, as if leaving a trail behind. A man approaches, barely lifting his feet, dragging a giant weapon behind him and muttering about how unbearably heavy it is. From the viewing platform, the spectators exchange confused glances, trying to figure out who this newcomer is and decide whether it is worth intervening at all. He calls a nearby figure and asks if he really dragged the heavy weapon here all the way. Instead, he hears a sharp warning. The exam is no place for games. The man's face twists with rage. He widens his eyes and accuses him of feigned ignorance, while charging that he commits disgusting acts, emphasizing even the usually restrained asterisk sand has been driven mad. At the mention of the veteran adventurer, he freezes, stuck in shock. He just remains as if he does not believe his own ears and repeats the name, breaking down in astonishment. The angry man raises the weapon high and declares that he will punish him for the suffering endured by those who cared for Usura's San, and thus a furious confrontation ignites on the spot. A winged giant creature suddenly descends from the sky, snatches a sword right out of the air, while Gashu and his companion stand in complete stupor, trying to understand where such a creature could have come from. He freezes, stunned. The weapon falls to the ground right in front of him. The creature lands gracefully, and the man strokes its feathers, thanking the beast for the help as it settles in place. He introduces himself as an S-rank adventurer and beast trainer SCMA bandager, and explains that he was asked to come and observe Gauche's exam, which immediately throws the young man off balance. Saima shifts his gaze to the creature and asks in a steady voice whether he should already remove this nuisance, the very one that has caused so much trouble. The beast lunged forward with incredible speed. A whirlwind flew past the frightened spectators. He instinctively tenses as the creature looms over him, and the confusion disappears without a trace, giving way to pure horror as he demands an explanation of what is happening. Saima points to the others and calls them the same filth that had been cleaning up the consequences of the experiment from the very beginning. He stood firm. His mere presence made the saboteurs panic as soon as it became clear that their hidden monster had been neutralized. The monster, filled with despair, made a clumsy, inaccurate attack, but it was easily knocked away. The attacker was twisted in shock. That's how the hidden poisonous claw traps worked. With a quick, trained movement, he dropped to his knees to tend to the beast. There was no emotion on his face as he addressed the suffering it endured. He watched intently as the beast exhaled. The tension in its jaw momentarily eased as he assessed the situation. Casting a glance at the fallen saboteur, he calmly suggested they ease the tension and get down to business. Then he shifted his gaze to the examiners, presented them the essence, and cold-bloodedly advised the man to disinfect his mouth. His gratitude was met with restraint silently. When the others moved forward, he firmly ordered to release him, and his authority worked without any disputes. Finally, he turned to Gash, while preparing to voice the real riddle why exactly he was assigned to monitor the exam. He pressed the question with his gaze, like a blade, and threw an accusation that he allegedly cheated to sneak into the S-rank dungeon with only his C-rank status. The accused shuddered. Sweat poured down his forehead like rain, while he fiercely denied, insisting that his party followed all procedures properly. In the silence of the distant corridors of Graham Metropolitan Library, a young woman sat over science, surrounded on all sides by walls with tall shelves full of ancient knowledge. Her thoughts were interrupted by a man who approached and introduced himself as Sigurd, a companion from the previous expedition, although she could not recall his face at all. Sigurd sat beside her and explained that he came to study the style of 4 divine bees, and she politely indicated that she noticed his presence. During the conversation, he demonstrated magic designed specifically for transmission and communication, and as soon as she heard it, her reaction was frank, expressive surprise. Then he sighed and voiced complaints about the escape of the glow bug, and passionately ignited a desire to master lighting magic to better assist his future endeavors. Together they delved into an ancient text, and came across a technique called skybox, the very one that promised to become invaluable for their future research. She quickly apologized, but the stern librarian abruptly cut off her words with a sharp gesture. After the remark, the librarian ponders how rapidly Gash's popularity is growing, and adds, his unique techniques have already become the topic of conversations throughout the city. He brushes off the compliment, insisting that he is merely a researcher of the 4 divine beasts, and himself enthusiastically talks about the intricacies of how to infuse a blade with the spirit of flames. Their lively conversation is suddenly cut off by the librarian. His face contorts with rage at their continuous noise. She covers her mouth with her hand out of shame, realizing that her excitement went too far and her voice escaped into the silence of the corridor. Somewhere else, a man stands before a companion and questions the legality of what is unfolding between them right now. He looks coldly at his target and smiles sinisterly, as if to say, such troublesome adventures are better wiped off the face of the earth. The target flinches in shock as the man lunges forward, closing the distance in a blurred splash of movement. He lunged forward, fists pounding with rhythmic precision. But as soon as the clash erupted, he dismissed his opponent's composure and mockingly humiliated him, saying he was nothing more than a simple rude fellow. The fighter froze for a moment, surveying the spacious area around. He immediately understood. The situation was deeply incomprehensible to him. He could not grasp why he was pushed into such a public, spectacular performance. Despite his confusion, he felt the full weight of the crowd's expectations. He honestly admitted to himself that he had no clear idea of his reputation, yet the roar of the fans still pushed him forward. In despair, with furious strength, he demanded to be taught the true worldview of a high-level adventurer, one where fierce duty is rewarded with honor for the faith others have placed in him. His opponent responded with a cold, painfully clear smile and threw down a challenge. Prove your worth with actions, not words. Suddenly, the atmosphere turned upside down. The man in front of him moved with a frightening, newly found fluidity, and the fighting style instantly transformed into a relentless barrage of strikes. He barely managed to deflect the incoming blades when his eyes suddenly widened. He felt a piercing shift in the opponent's aura, sign of a deadly change in intentions. The attack continued with blinding speed, could not keep up with the opponent, who pressed on and drove him into desperate defense. He abruptly ended the intense sparring fight. His powerful presence made the fighters disperse while he announced that the fight was over. Shifting his gaze to SCMA, he sternly stated that the escalation of the conflict had gone far beyond the initial parameters of their request. He denied the very idea that he had lost control and cut in. If his methods are considered distrustful, the task should be handed over to a Brill instead of him. The tension eased as soon as he introduced himself as Big and Bremist, head of the Adventurers Guild, and apologized for the sudden, unexpected intrusion. He explained that during the exam he aimed to pit the candidate against a worthy opponent, although he admitted that everything had turned into unnecessary, exhausting hassle. Reviewing the consequences, he voiced an old interest in the candidate's potential, while the others merely exchanged tired glances as if something utterly pointless had happened all day. When the chaos finally subsided, he turned his gaze to the candidate and solemnly congratulated him on successfully passing the B-rank exam. He stood straight, calmly contemplating the trial, then brushed off that former outburst as if it was just a test of the traveler's endurance and spirit. He gave a gentle smile and advised his companion to accept his defeats as an inevitable step on the path of learning. With a decisive gesture, he emphasized, "That's exactly what it is all about." Looking away, he suggested they go to the infirmary and check on his partner. While they were walking, he asked if his companion planned to rise to higher ranks, noting that usually 5 years of achievements are needed to be evaluated for A rank. He explained that the association supports an early promotion system. Qualified candidates can bypass standard waiting periods at the guild's discretion. Then he expanded the offer regarding early promotion and asked his companion to share thoughts on how to proceed further. Everything hit him at once. He was granted an A rank license, a prestigious mark that now lay in his hand. He admitted his concern. The increasing workload for an A rank adventurer could interfere with his streaming career, so before fully committing, he sought advice. He listened while she pressed on. The chance must not be missed, and she still had plenty of creative ideas for future releases. Stepping aside, he decided to postpone the final answer and thought, the promotion will finally give him the freedom to enter high-level dungeons without begging for permission. Recalling the bureaucratic nightmare he endured to finally gain access to Azure Crystal Cave, he exhaled a heavy sigh. He had to get on his feet and coordinate the work of too many people. With a nod of agreement, he emphasized the need for better coordination and moved on to avoid such complications again. They agreed to go for a walk and eat to celebrate, though he threw in a joking warning, drinking minimum. Meanwhile, on the Snakes of the Scorching Sky, Gildorm suddenly and cruelly kicked the man. He fell to the ground with a thud. He was being beaten for absolute worthlessness. True chaos broke out in the guild. The participants quarreled over a failed exam, and passions flared due to the shortage of those who remained from the travelers, and because of the drop in income from streams. In the chatter, someone again voiced the idea to recruit Gasha. They said he was seen at the exam site, and after expulsion, he trained even more fiercely. He failed to contain the shock. He shouted that it was impossible for someone once considered a dead weight to become so powerful in such a short time. Rage surged even stronger as soon as his stream flashed on the screen. There was not a second left to digest the sharp rise of his reputation. While the broadcast continued, they recognized the girl, the one who walked beside him, a former member of their own guild. They were amazed he effortlessly dealt with a whole pack of monsters. The numbers on the screen knocked them out cold. Over 120,000 viewers simultaneously, and even their modest 10,000 suddenly seemed trivial. Amid the shock, he casually recalled that he had recently decided to join a fan club, and it seemed he was not at all worried about the professional crisis unfolding around them. The atmosphere instantly turned hostile as loud orders rang out, "Fires Ohio immediately." He was immediately kicked out of the guild without any hesitation. Frustration burst out. A heavy fist slammed on the table with a thud, and the accumulated tension finally broke free. Standing before the table, she coldly and thoughtfully voiced the obvious. He was much stronger than she had imagined. She had underestimated him. She looked at him with a confident, understanding gaze, and silently calculated the moment when the guild would finally realize the scale of the talent it had rejected. That thought was cut off by a sudden and piercing revelation. He needed to raise his own stream to make it much more spectacular than anything his rivals could produce. He shifted his gaze to the distant, glowing figure of Chartreuse, the legendary establishment frequented by the elite, and wondered if the rumors about its colossal wealth were true. A sharp, predatory smile stretched across his face, and a cunning plan began to form in his mind. He immediately turned to his companion and ordered her to get 2 tickets to the exclusive platform. Her body trembled for a moment at the unexpected request. With a flash of fierce determination, he whispered a silent challenge, promising that the world would soon see his true capabilities. She sat opposite her partner, playful, but with a calculating expression on her face, making it clear. Those who underestimated them were about to receive a harsh lesson. A luxuriously dressed man with a broad smile addressed the audience, and announced that today's broadcast was now over. He paused for a moment. His face instantly changed as soon as he noticed something or someone unexpected nearby. Next to him, a young woman froze in shock and looked with disbelief. Her eyes widened sharply as she recognized the approaching figure. With a sudden jerk, he rushed forward and joy flashed across his face as he exclaimed that he had finally found her. He extends a small object to her and explains simply, he was looking for her specifically to return this item. She takes back the returned object and exhales with relief. Now it is again in her possession, although a slight trace remains because of which the item ended up in other hands. The man looks and tears well up in his eyes. He is deeply moved, revealing the whole drama of emotions, and in response makes a gesture returning the lost item. They stand side by side, exchanging apologies and mutual respect, and finally leave the misunderstanding behind. She tightly clutched the ticket, and on her face shock and enlightenment intertwined. Just after watching the Golden Sun broadcast, she was overwhelmed by a deep sense of her own inadequacy, and she accepted this gift as a necessary lesson in humility. The demanding traveler stubbornly insisted that she leave it, glowing with delight while he poured out joy about her upcoming broadcast. Then he turned to his companion and hinted, the ticket should be put to good use because he was not going to waste it. With a dazzling, tearfully radiant smile, she accepted the invitation, praising the eccentric man for his kindness. In a moment, the carriage rolled through quiet, moonlit streets, carrying them to the next destination. In the carriage, he honestly admitted, the situation was a bit awkward, but at the same time confessed that seeing his companion so determined was a truly refreshing sign. She listened attentively as he said that her outfit suited her much better than it could ever suit him, and for a moment she was breathless. The shopkeeper interrupted their conversation and proudly declared that his establishment also specialized in wedding attire, so he invited them to return for future needs. She blushed, immersed in sweet dreams about wedding rehearsals, and her companion did not even suspect whether anything strange had come from his side. Meanwhile, another carriage stopped and he jumped out first, extending his hand to his sister as soon as they reached the destination. They stood before the luxurious illuminated mansion. Both froze, struck by the scale and beauty of the building under the night sky. Walking through the grounds, they looked around and paused for a moment, immediately recognizing the place. The most prestigious restaurant in the capital, Chartreuse. Inside, an employee checked the tickets, led them to the lobby, and immediately clarified. A special vocal performance featuring Melpis was scheduled for the evening. He was informed that the entire event would be broadcast live, and he responded with only a restrained nod. While she wandered toward the grand stairs, captivated by the surrounding view, her foot slipped on the polished floor and she stumbled. He instantly reached out to catch her. Both, having just regained their balance, immediately felt the treacherous slipperiness of the floor. She extends her hand, a sharp, firm gesture to maintain balance, and offers help to the man who ended up on the floor without any ceremony after her own fall. Looking back, a concerned person approaches to check if everything is all right with the group and quickly reassures, everything is under control here. He encounters a familiar face, freezes, and opens his eyes in surprise because she is here, and adds that he was issued a ticket to the guild's social reception. She confirms her identity and shows that she is actually Melbus. This news knocks the man off his feet in shock. Having realized who she really is, she introduces Hash to the woman standing before them. Feeling that they need privacy, she suggests stepping back for a moment, and he obediently complies with her request. When they step aside, they see the sisters communicating and freeze. They are struck by the surreal strangeness of this meeting. She officially introduces herself Melbus Aronia and thanks them for the care shown to her younger sister. He responds with usual modesty, downplaying the significance of his actions. He froze in place, and she quietly smiled and said she had heard about him all the way from Missouri. She ran her finger over her lips in a teasing gesture of mystery, and he awkwardly darted with a demand to find out exactly what had been said about him. Meanwhile, the streamer expressed to the viewers her enthusiastic appraisal, praising his modesty and kindness, then confessed that she dreamed of someday being next to him during a stream. She extended her hand to him and asked him to take care of her dear sister, and this immediately threw him into a panic whirl of uncertainty about how to properly respond to such a gesture. An employee jumped up to Melbus and gave a sign. It was time to prepare for her upcoming engagement. She firmly took his hand, showing sincere gratitude for the meeting, and invited him to enjoy her performance later that same day. The physical touch overwhelmed him completely. Thoughts wildly raced as he tried to comprehend the incredible power imbued in that moment. With a final wave, she went to perform her duties, and he remained in place, watching as others eagerly awaited her performance. He stood in the huge hall, stunned by the sudden turn of events, unable to say aloud what had just happened. The atmosphere around was soaked with exquisite leisure. Guests sat at tables savoring the luxurious surroundings. Before him stretched a table, richly decorated with exquisite culinary creations, each dish served with impeccable attention to detail. His companion was glowing with delight, eyes sparkling, and he looked completely enchanted by this feast, while the man himself was noticeably overwhelmed by the intensity of the impression. She savored rare salmon with a shimmering gleam. Holding her breath, she was struck by the legendary taste of the great boa meat, and she literally dissolved in boundless pleasure from this flavor. He acknowledged her words, noting how easy it was to lose track of time here, yet still reminded Melbas's performance would begin very soon. When the light began to fade, suddenly silence covered the entire room, a sign that the main event was about to start. The door opened and the guest of honor appeared, Melbas. She stepped forward to begin her long-awaited show. She greets her audience with a warm smile, thanks the stream viewers, and at that moment the digital chat explodes with compliments on her beauty and anticipation before the performance. As soon as she steps onto the stage, the air begins to tremble with magical light, and the observer nearby involuntarily fixes his gaze on her. Her digital viewers become uncontrollably excited and freeze in awe, noting the elegance of her footwear and marveling at the incredible number of people watching simultaneously, even before the first note. A subtle change in her expression captures the attention of a man in the crowd. For a moment he is paralyzed, unable to believe he just saw her smile for real. Illuminated by a single dazzling spotlight, she stands alone at the center of the stage. The silence in the room only emphasizes the weight of this moment. She gestures lightly and elegantly, with no falter in her composure, while she prepares to enchant the entire hall with her own voice. Nearby, musicians tune their instruments and signal to the guests. The performance is about to begin. With a sudden powerful release of energy, she begins to sing and the audience below freezes, as if affected by the very force of her presence. In a small, dimly lit room, a group of people sit together. Their faces show concentration as they hold a quiet, serious conversation. She directs with her hands, and her voice rings with admiration as she talks about a truly special person. Her companions pause for a moment, speechless. Once again lost in thought, she recalls how her sister worked tirelessly from a young age, singing day after day, hoping to leave a lasting mark for others. As she speaks, she admits to the group. She once envied her sister, a secret she kept to herself and hid, and now for the first time has let out. She talks about the complex mix of feelings that grew each time she saw her sister gain fame through her broadcasts. She was happy for her success, but inside her own feeling of inadequacy stubbornly smoldered. Lowering her gaze, she honestly adds, she lacks the special traits that distinguished her sister and truly finds it hard to find her own path. He listens attentively, then gives a reassuring look as if to say, Missouri has her own unique courage and knowledge. Missouri raises her eyes, and her face softens. She begins to accept the truth in his words. She looks, eyes wide open, and shining. It is clear she was moved by the same feelings once shared with her. A barely restrained laugh bursts from her chest as she recalls. Her sister Melbas told her exactly the same thing. She extends her hand and offers a gentle gesture of connection, and her gaze softens in it. A quiet, attentive, understanding concentration. The atmosphere changes tensely when she confesses love through a song, and this thought resonates with her companion across the table. With grace, she rises to perform. Her fingers lightly touch the keys and she pours her soul into the melody. When the last sounds fade, she stands before the audience and sincerely thanks them for their presence. The digital language showcase metrics jump wildly upward. Over 1 million viewers celebrate the privilege of seeing such a spectacle in their lifetime. Noticing the growing noise in the comments about the unexpected guest, she quickly ends the stream and promises to return very soon. She watches as the patron points a finger accusatorily at the dish and demands an explanation for why such dangerous ingredients are served in this establishment. Tension flares. As soon as the man recognizes a familiar face, he exclaims in shock that a cirrus suddenly appeared amid all this commotion. He steps forward, introduces himself as the restaurant manager, and calmly responds to the accusations, saying that a bone of a poisonous scorpion was found in the dish, while nearby visitors begin whispering anxiously. Asterisk falls into thought. Venom scorpion is truly dangerous, and those black bones stand out clearly yet almost never appear in such circumstances. She pulls herself together and decides to broadcast this drama live under the title, while hiding in an expensive restaurant to attract viewers' attention. The manager firmly denies any possibility of contamination, assures that their kitchen undergoes strict quality checks, but his words meet the cold distrust of those demanding proof. Porridge scatters into chaos. Another visitor stumbles upon a similar black bone right in their plate, and this ignites mass panic and new accusations that the infection could not have been a coincidence that passed on its own. He froze in amazement, trying to reconcile the manager's words about high standards with the undeniable evidence spread out on the tables. Sitting opposite his companion, he fixed his gaze and did not look away until the tension at the table reached its limit. Nearby, a patron convulsively clutches her chest and gasps for air. She is suddenly overwhelmed by a raging, disgusting weakness, and a man nearby responds with visible, panicked despair. Chaos erupts in the restaurant. Visitors whisper in shock, realizing such a catastrophic failure has occurred in such a prestigious establishment. He releases a low, chilling laugh. It is audible how the unfolding disaster pleases him, and leans forward to address his companion with a grim demand for her attention. With a cold, measured expression, he insists. Even a former manager cannot fail to notice how serious what is unfolding before them is. He carefully examines the object and confirms the suspicion. This is not a bone from a venom scorpion. He looks at the surrounding tables and concludes. Only those eating this dish suffer, so the hint is clear. There is no avoiding the use of a certain poison here. He takes control of the situation, instructs his companion to gather information while he focuses on the investigation. Returning to his associate, he asks to inspect the suspicious bone and emphasizes that they are now in an extremely delicate situation. His eyes narrow as soon as he realizes the perpetrator is unaware of the true nature of the poison, and he decides to use this blindness to his advantage. He extends his hand and takes the object with his bare palm. Everyone is shocked. They fear possible toxicity. Examining the item, he confirms it is definitely not the bone of a venomous scorpion, and his companion freezes in amazement at such skill. He explains, a real venom scorpion bone is translucent when held against the light, and structurally it is completely different from what he has in his hand. He speaks directly to the man and demands that he state his name. The man nervously admits he was just a farmer named Gashu and simply got scared under the pressure of circumstances. Despite this refusal, he does not give up and continues to explain. Venomous scorpions hide in the crevices of medicinal herbs during the rainy season, and when the harvest is gathered, they involuntarily become a real danger. As the tension shifts, the people nearby already understand. There is something off in his testimony, and they whisper that he really was a former farmer, until one observer urges the group to focus on the magic that is working. The atmosphere grows heavier, and darkness seems to hang over everyone. Magical residues begin to crawl across the floor and draw everyone's gaze to this disturbing event. She freezes in shock, staring at the dark substance, and immediately recognizes in it the same poison from that fatal day. Her face hardens from the realization. Meanwhile, the spectators are distracted by the spectacle. They exchange remarks about the charm of the woman in the dress and the chaotic events unfolding right now. She addresses the group calmly, almost analytically, and explains. According to the magical text she just studied, such anomalies appear when the summoner's concentration is disturbed, causing his magic to become unstable. After her insight, the amazed suddenly exhale with relief, and notice that the nausea has disappeared, as if a miracle will happen with a single wave. She stands straight, demands to stop the broadcast so they can discuss the matter privately away from prying eyes. He challenges her, asks where she is so confident about the nature of magic, and brushes off her words, saying there is not enough evidence to call him the culprit. She is stunned by his defiance, insists that his testimony alone is not enough to prove innocence, and demands an explanation of where he gets such confidence in his own words. He threw a smug, all-knowing smile, saying that even if his past actions could be called questionable, his words now sound indisputable. The room became increasingly hard to breathe in. Each of his phrases brought a new wave of tension, as if he really was the only one speaking. And even if the remains are found, there will be no indisputable way to link them to him. He leaned back, coldly and steadfastly maintaining this tone, and again threw down the gauntlet. Let them present real, tangible evidence if they want to continue making these accusations. Suddenly, all focus shifted to her. As soon as she raised the device, her face flashed with shock and clear realization. She saw the name on the screen, Melbus. During the review of the recent broadcast, it became clear that the woman secretly placed something on the neighboring plates. She stood among those present, maintaining calm in which hidden tension trembled, until finally asked if she had anything to say in her defense. He flared up with rage, pointed a finger accusing, and vehemently rejected any involvement, repeating that the magic and all actions taken were entirely her own work. The audience whispered. Everyone saw that his orders were already obvious, so such transparent attempts to shift the blame would not be accepted. Under pressure of circumstances, a hand involuntarily reached out to grab him as if he was going to go with them further for interrogation. He jerked back wildly, shouting not to touch him, convulsively breaking free from their grip. When he was about to escape, a voice ordered him to wait, but he, in despair, was trying to break free from this scuffle, waved off and pushed past the others. The strain proved unbearable. He collapsed to the floor and, struggling, tried to stand up again, while the weight of the situation oppressed him more with each moment. He remains bound, his gaze is held captive by a predatory captor looming above, cold, unchanging like a sentence. While he continues to think, he honestly admits, attempts to conduct his own broadcasts showed him the real difficulty, how hard it is to create content that both he and his audience can love. The villain sharply jerks his patience in thin clothing, demanding silence with a sharp, aggressive command. In a sudden burst of defiance, he clenches his fist and abruptly jumps forward, trying to break through the gap. As the scuffle intensifies, he begins to doubt the very essence of the broadcast, whether this is truly the path his companion intended to take from the very beginning, and his kidnapper explodes with a fierce, desperate tirade. Captor strikes and a technique called Dragon Hammer comes into play. Palms, as if with all their might, hammer their target. The blow lashes him, he falters, and the things he was carrying scatter across the floor as soon as he loses balance. He sinks to his knees, stunned by the sudden surge of his opponent's strength, and only manages to wonder, has he become weaker, or did his enemy simply outpace him in a moment? He remains curled up on the floor, and defeat still weighs heavily on him, while the guests around carelessly continue their evening as if they do not see his troubles at all. A woman approaches and, like a knife, cuts the tension. She introduces herself as Misha from the Duke's house. She admits she is sincerely impressed by Gash's broadcast and eagerly offers a joint stream at the estate. The gathered crowd turns their attention to the commotion. Curious faces change to anxiety as soon as they see what is happening. A man with deep regret speaks, admitting, under any circumstances, letting a stranger into their ranks was a terrible mistake, and he takes full responsibility. As the clash begins to subside, the men discuss the consequences, doubting Gash's involvement and pondering why this recent uproar was even caused. He shifts his gaze into memories and bitterly notes, the one who was once his superior would certainly have exploded with rage seeing the scale of the latest chaos. With a pained expression, he pleadingly stretches out his hands, begging for mercy, acknowledging that he understands the suffering of all affected and asking if they can find it in their hearts to forgive the offender. The surrounding spectators silently watch. On their faces is a mix of shock and focused contemplation, and the weight of his request slowly settles in the air. He stands in the middle of the noisy banquet hall, intently observing how relationships in the crowd are reshaped. Tension dissipates, and the atmosphere becomes warmer, more festive. They sit in a private VIP room. The topic is a meeting with a guild representative. Everyone wonders if it is a sign of gratitude, a gift, or perhaps an official conversation about a broken plate and the needed compensation. He already has a habit of getting too nervous over such things. Asuris and Gasha find the restaurant owner, who sincerely thanks them for their recent help and immediately voices a formal request. He offers them to become sponsors of his establishment, Golden Sun, and this sudden proposal leaves the adventurers frankly stunned. The owner clarifies, this is not just a sign of gratitude for their previous deeds, but a genuine business offer. He reveals the plan. He needs high-quality monster meat to feed visitors with ingredients better than anything any other establishment can offer. Gashu hesitates, scratches the back of his head, and admits that their cause is still in its infancy, so perhaps they are not yet ready to take on such a commitment. She bursts into the conversation with contagious enthusiasm, insisting that to refuse such a wonderful opportunity is simply a terrible waste. Melbus Aronia calmly observes the exchange and notes, even if this new idea can be frightening, the genuine desire to help them must be accepted with dignity. As soon as the path forward becomes clear, the group agrees to the partnership. They exchange words of mutual gratitude and turn their gaze to the future, where prosperity is expected. He lingered in the spacious hall of Chaltros, turned around, and spoke to the woman who called him. His face remained stone-like as if the burden of the words he had to say weighed heavily on him. She listened attentively as he forcefully chose his words, admitting that he had long wanted to thank her but had not yet found the time to acknowledge her performance. He searched for the right words, stumbled, and gestured wildly as he confessed to that inner turmoil, while she looked at him with gentle, patient attention. Suddenly overwhelmed by sincerity, declared that her singing deeply touched him, and from the bottom of his heart thanked her for how her voice affected him. She accepted his praise with dignity. A soft smile touched her lips as she vowed to continue singing and to find meaning in the connection she had managed to establish with her audience. They stood together, but a sudden obstacle shattered the moment. A young woman rushed at him like a whirlwind, begging him not to leave her, her voice trembling with frantic urgency. He turned to recognize the newcomer, and while the two women exchanged a warm sisterly farewell, his head spun with the promising future of their guilt. Under the evening sky, he cast a glance at the illuminated grounds. Replaying the event and the heavy burden of gratitude, he forced himself to say to Weiss thank you for the opportunity given to him. He is suddenly thrown off by her instant passion. He catches himself thinking would a simple thank you be enough to ignite such a fire in her eyes. She admits, in her soul she truly respects her opposite, but her voice firmly cuts through the air they need to see each other as rivals and not allow themselves to be outdone. Urging him not to slow down, she suddenly sharply stops her gaze. Her attention catches something, or someone, hidden in the shadows. They freeze in shocked confusion as a small figure with packages approaches them, and only then do they realize. The traveler is Ryu. A sharp, palpable tension hangs in the air as they stand before the exhausted traveler. Their hearts falter repeatedly due to the unexpected meeting. He leans closer, a focused anxiety appearing on his face as he examines the heavy mechanical device that Ryu dragged here. All eyes involuntarily fall to the ground. There lies an unconscious young girl with fox ears, and they can only guess who she is and what brought her to this state. The farmer surveys the harvest with a satisfied smile, noting that the crops have grown far too well. He shifts his gaze to the door. A young girl with features resembling a fox cautiously enters and stands in the beam of light. Noticing that she has awakened, he explains. He brought her to his quarters because he could not just leave her. She lifts her gaze to him, clearly not understanding where she is. She asks to be taught how to swim, but he hesitates, saying that as a beast person she probably knows more about it than he does. Yet she stubbornly insists on his advice. He agrees to help. He orders her to start with the basics of technique, and she readily accepts his offer. He tells her to try pushing off the air, and she immediately starts moving, spinning, and trying to master the necessary actions. Suddenly Gasha rushes into the room and shouts that an emergency has occurred, and the girl freezes, stunned, right in the middle of her practice. She goes out to the audience, introduces herself as Roko, thanks them for still watching, and with a half-smile says that there is no one else. Returning to the table, she praises Gasha for his teaching abilities, and he continues to remain modest, as if he is not a mentor just helping. Gasha recalls how he learned about the broadcast from her grandfather, a revelation that literally takes the breath away from the young fox cub. Roko explains, her grandfather studied ancient texts to master the techniques, but it was not easy for him to pass them on so that they really worked. With a confident smile, she boasts how easily she managed the morning exercise, and loudly declares herself a genius. She admits, although many seek training, she decided to come on her own so as not to cause problems for others. But suddenly she bows low and sighing pleadingly asks, take her in as a student. He restrains his reaction. It is clear that he is confused by the very honor, since the prestigious Shishenden school recognized her. He glanced down at the young foxkin, and she stubbornly did not back down from her sincere speech, to take her for training through the Shishenden school. Finally yielding, he agreed to help her in everything he could, and could not help but notice the strange, archaic manner in which she spoke. She faltered, caught a barely noticeable nostalgic scent, and it suddenly reminded her of mice, although the very thought clearly confused her. He offered her to live with him for some time, noting that his daily routine depended on farming, so her presence would be a very timely help. The next day the group set off into the vast, open grassy steppes just beyond the borders of royal capital. They started the broadcast with the traveler introducing himself, first to his companion and then, with a bright, practiced smile, showing them to their viewers. Then the digital interface was flooded with messages. Viewers joyfully greeted him and actively discussed the latest news about the sponsorship deal. He entered the chat, sincerely thanked for the support, and then switched the spotlight to his special guest, and the hall was still trembling with tension, filled with curiosity. Proudly presenting the new companion to the viewers, he immediately sparked a wave of excitement. The chat was showered with compliments, calling her cute, and was amazed by such an unexpected arrival. She again captured attention on their broadcast and declared, Rocco is here to observe, so we need to quickly move on to the planned content to catch up on the previous delay. Barely with any pomp, she announced the main challenge of the day and began preparing a huge piece of boar meat from the very scale of this task. He only sighed sadly. The streamer started the stream, engaged the audience in conversation, and threw out a new challenge: to go in search of ingredients to cook the dish. She boldly announces that her goal is the great boar, and the reviewers immediately flare up with anxiety. This creature, apparently, is by no means one to be ignored. The smile remains on her face as she returns to the restaurant advertisement, inviting subscribers to visit and taste the flavors she just ate. But as soon as she gets back to work, she notices the beast from afar. It is already destroying the local fields. His companion Gashu was already prepared for the hunt and gave a sign with a gesture, as if to say they were ready to move on according to plan. The great boar still does not notice their presence. It continues to root around among the crops, searching for food. Gosher narrows his eyes, and his determination hardens as he concludes. The destruction of the farm must be stopped immediately. He draws his blade, freezes in a fighting stance, and is ready to intercept the beast before it can cause even more damage. He focuses, tightening himself from within, and does not take his eyes off the giant beast about to perform a specialized technique. With a sharp, explosive movement, he delivers a powerful strike. The force of the lunge cuts through the air. Seeing the threat, he shouted to the fox girl to run, but the creature was already upon them. Her size is staggering. In an unexpected burst of strength, the fox girl intercepted the beast. Both he and the streamer froze in shock at her pure power. When the dust settled, the streamer went live and showed her audience an incredible trick, marveling at the hidden abilities of the beastman. He apologized for his miscalculation, acknowledged the unexpected strength of the fox girl, and at the same time emphasized the enthusiasm of his own viewers. They exchanged looks full of mutual surprise, still trying to comprehend the power of the recently experienced clash. The next day, the streamer greeted her audience and announced that during his absence, she and Fox Girl would take over the cooking. She lifts a piece of wonderful forest meat, marinated in wine, and asks the young fox girl to soften it with her bare hands. The girl apologizes once again for the mess, but her companion only strokes her head and declares that the chaotic state of the meat is the perfect option for hamburger patties, so the online audience erupts with delight. Just as they are about to take the next step, the door suddenly opens and a familiar face returns to the frame. Everyone instantly refocuses to keep the broadcast's pace. Gashu enters the house and immediately catches himself noticing the complete chaos around. His facial expression quickly changes to anxiety as he asks if anyone was attacked, and in response, joyful greetings. He silently listens as others admit that their culinary attempts did not go exactly as planned, revealed by awkward smiles that, along with themselves, left behind all this mess. The digital audience watches the broadcast, laughs, praises the help of the Fox girls, and does not refrain from pointed jabs at the streamer for her clumsy culinary failures. Despite the earlier fuss, the final dish, a hearty chopped meat patty served with fresh vegetables, looks unexpectedly appetizing. They sit together to satisfy their hunger. The day's tension eases as they share the dishes prepared during the stream. When the food is finished and the broadcast ends, he involuntarily reflects on how the viewers have already warmly received the Fox girl. Exhausted by the day's events, he decides to leave early and leaves the cleaning to others. Before leaving, he lingers near the spot and watches the Fox girl. He notices a strange, barely noticeable expression on her face, one that does not at all match her usual manner during the broadcast. She was sitting alone, looking at the night sky until he approached and quietly broke the silence. Under the glow of the full moon, she confessed that she had been watching the moonlight, and he only confirmed her words. Turning back to him, she said that she wanted to apologize for something, and for a moment he was truly confused by her sudden change of mood. She began to tell how 6 months ago she came across a broadcast with him, a moment that forever etched itself in her memory. While she spoke, she revealed how his interaction with spirits opened a new world for her, filling her with genuine joy. Her face darkened as she admitted. During that broadcast, she sent a comment under the influence of others' negative thoughts and now sincerely regretted her choice. She confessed that her grandfather scolded her afterward, explaining, "Judging a person only by what is visible on the surface is a terrible mistake." He listened attentively, already piecing together the meaning. The lesson she learned was to never draw conclusions about a person's true character based solely on outward impressions. He listened carefully while she told how many hours in a row she watched his old broadcasts until she reached a certain conclusion. She said she came not to see a villain in him, but to see a person who directs his strength toward what is right. Despite the sudden remorse, she admitted, the weight of her past actions still presses on her, so she could not look him in the eyes and apologize properly. She broke down under the burden of her own remorse and cried, sobbing, begging for forgiveness. He looked at her gently, as if accepting that he himself had often made painful mistakes in his past. Worried about the recent clash with Asuras, he reproached himself for having worn force instead of seeking a path that would better understand the other, and suddenly realized, true power lies in looking people straight in the face. She looked up and her eyes widened as she understood. She too needed to find the courage to face her own mistakes and not run away. He thanked her for the courage her frankness had given him, and after a moment when they finally felt each other, she embraced him. The peace he had long sought came. He sat quietly next to his companion until a familiar voice cut through the silence and asked if she could join them. She explained that she had been looking for him to talk about Roko, and added that she herself intended to bring up the same topic. They exchanged a look in which there was no doubt. In their attentive, unshaken eyes was the full weight of their shared concern for the young fox girl. Turning back to the girl, she extended a warm invitation and asked if she wanted to join the Golden Sun party. The young girl looked up, her eyes opened wide both in disbelief and hope. She whispered softly, asking if it was really allowed. Under the glow of the full moon, the three sat together on the roof, and a new closeness was born in the silence as they gazed into the night. Gashu sits opposite the official and tells about the recent events related to Roko. He modestly deflects praise for his actions and insists he did nothing extraordinary. The official acknowledges his sincerity, emphasizing the decision to take responsibility for Roko was not just a reaction to a child's words, it was a true choice to look the situation straight in the face. He expresses sincere and deep gratitude, reflecting on how their meeting allowed him to touch the profound techniques of the Shish and Enryu style. The conversation changes as soon as he nudges Gasha. Further spreading the name of his school around the world after this request, the traveler becomes noticeably determined. Suddenly the air thickens. He cuts off the conversation mid-word, clearly distracted by some urgent matter. Left alone with his thoughts, he will consider whether to inform Roko about the difficulties of his martial arts because he fears it will only worry her in vain. The next night he gathers with Roko and everyone nearby, and announces a tour of the Golden Sun base to welcome the new member. When they reach the huge building, he notices the dim lighting and wonders why they were brought so late, but still heads to the reception desk. He led them through the spacious lobby and explained that this place was once one of the most sought-after guild locations, furnished down to the smallest detail, spacious so one thing gnawed at him: why it was abandoned. Next to him, the streamer glowed with excitement and noted that reports of ghostly appearances were accumulating more and more frequently, so tonight their broadcast would unexpectedly undergo a test of courage. She dampened this enthusiasm with a calm reality check. Rumors still circulate, but those from the association who spent the night here assured absolutely nothing ordinary happened. She admitted that she herself had not seen anything yet, but still honestly added, the prospect of a real ghost sparked even greater curiosity in her to thoroughly inspect the premises. As soon as they entered the conference hall, she said she hoped the night tour would finally bring to light the secrets hidden in the very walls. Noticing the sudden discomfort of the fox girl, he gave her a reassuring smile and told her not to worry while they prepared to head to the dining hall. Suddenly, a cold wave washed over him, as if a ghostly presence was about to loom right behind his shoulder, and he burst into a nervous, forced laugh. The chat exploded with warnings about something lurking behind him, and just as he turned, a bony hand stretched out from the darkness to grab his sleeve. He shudders from shock as soon as the bony hand touches Hema. Panic reaction. Live on air, spreading to the viewers, who interpret his genuine terror as a masterful performance. The spectral creature appears and disappears, leaving him doubtful of his own senses as he tries to discern the invisible threat. Searching for the source of the disturbance, he frantically scans the room, while the fox girl relies on her heightened senses to track the entity's scent. Deciding to finish off the prankster, they dashed after him, not suspecting that the broadcast was capturing every moment of their dangerous investigation. The chase leads them into a trap. From the shadows suddenly bursts a skeletal figure, attacking the fox girl with a terrifying, empty smile. When the floor suddenly collapses, a frightened scream breaks out, and from the darkness emerges a dark, ghostly figure. Her companion rushes forward, concerned for her safety, but she remains composed and assures that she is fine. Among the debris stands a mysterious treasure chest, an unexpected find in this complete neglect. She reaches for her chest, and the ghostly creature lunges forward sharply, growling a warning: do not touch. The air thickens with tension as the spectral guardian becomes increasingly palpable nearby. Cold energy trembles in waves. The spirit demands that she immediately release her chest. Her empty eyes flare with possessive fury. Panic overwhelms as everyone involuntarily leans back, and the spirit roars at them: drop the treasure and leave it here. Objects suddenly begin flying through the air. They are pushed by a poltergeist in a furious hysteria, forcing the travelers to brace themselves and shield against this onslaught. He steps forward and firmly says that they will return the chest unharmed, hoping to appease the restless spirit. He stands unwavering, covering his companions, and orders them to stay away from the chest. His face hardens with determination. Seeking to calm the creature, he reaches out to return the chest, but his hand passes through the ghostly silhouette and no harm occurs. The spirit bursts into a hysterical explosion of loud discontent, whipping reproaches for foolishness. Its empty eyes blaze with indignation. In an instant, he realized the futility of physical contact, heeded the spirit's advice, and used telekinesis to control the object, after which he shyly apologized for his previous aggression. When the tension finally subsided, the spirit pulled a bottle from the chest and noted that it looked like a perfectly reasonable being one could talk to it. He exhaled with relief. The contents in his chest had miraculously survived all trials whole and unharmed. Exhausted by this chaotic encounter, he decided, enough, time to end the broadcast and finally take a well-deserved rest. The spectral guardian loomed over them, introduced himself as the spirit living here, and invited them to ask any questions that came to mind. He nodded toward the wrapped object and asked what it was. The ghostly guardian explained. It was a collection of treasures he painstakingly gathered for his wife at home. The spirit continued and explained. He had remained here since his death itself so that nothing would be stolen from them, though he admitted he had been too careless with previous inhabitants. She froze in shock, realizing the spirit had been watching them all this time, even watching their broadcasts. She reproached him for violating their privacy, but he responded by pointing out the audacity of their own past actions. Then he shifted his gaze to the group and gave a sharp piece of advice. They should have more shame. And yet he himself admitted he was indifferent to human women. She listened attentively, and the expression on her face would frown and then relax as she pondered the spirit's view of humanity. Suddenly, the spirit sharply stretched out a bony finger and declared that she had correctly recognized a werebeast in him. The skeletal figure nods joyfully. Beastmen have appeared again, and he explains that he cannot leave his current dwelling but still has enough generosity to give a gift. He hesitates, stunned by how easily and effortlessly he offers such a precious find. He says, when she finally returns home, it will be appropriate to hand over this item to the family of the original owner. The young fox Kindra asks to name the family, and her curiosity ignites from this very demand. He holds an empty gaze, and suddenly a gap opens in memory. He admits memories of past life seem to have melted away as soon as he died, so he promises to share more as soon as he remembers something else. Having fixed his gaze on the bottle of aged spirits, he asked to have it taken to the old man named Yagi. He said it needed a little more time to mature. He warns her not to drink it alone, and others watch in surprise as his unexpected kindness spills out. She listens attentively while the traveler expresses concern about Yaga-san's sudden back pain, and with each word, she realizes the full seriousness of the situation. The bony figure greets the group with the same familiar warmth, teasing the traveler, implying that he himself is already aging. She respectfully, reverently, and formally entrusts the task to Foxen, who accepts the responsibility, giving a short, stern nod. The conversation shifts when she mentions the encounter with the beast-kin creature at the end, and the adventurer's curiosity immediately spikes to the highest level regarding this mysterious figure. He freezes, his eyes widen, and at that moment he is pierced by a sharp, sudden realization her words turn into consequences for him that can no longer be hidden. She notices the tension. Yaga-san seems satisfied but still remains wary of those who might try to exploit the old man's love for spirits. The fox girl looks at the skeletal figure, and her face remains unreadable as she replays the strange encounter in her mind. She gazes at the bony hand. A spark of recognition flashes in her mind until she looks away from the familiar bracelet. She tightly grips the bracelet, a sharp breath escapes her chest as the weight of the discovery settles on her shoulders. 5 days ago, the skeletal guardian led them along the road, promising peace on the condition that the dormitory would be watched over while they were away. Ahead lies a path that requires the skill of an S-rank adventurer to pass the treacherous dungeon gates. They stand ready alongside their loyal companions, prepared to face all the trials that await ahead. Greetings still echo as Sigurd introduces himself to the young foxman, forging a fragile alliance. With a slight smile, he notes, taking a child into an S-rank dungeon is too bold, a slow adventure sortie for an A-rank. The group freezes in stunned silence, faces frozen in shock as they just notice the unexpected. On the way, the whole group rides in a horse-drawn carriage. Path to the forest is already in full swing. He asked to clarify their destination. Lagruna Forest and wondered if it was really the place mentioned on the broadcast. The traveler explains that he intends to gather plenty of flour and cannot shake the doubt. Does his companion really imagine the danger this forest hides? His confusion troubles him. He insists on the thought that the forest is treacherous by itself. Trees shift from place, so maps become useless, and the true nature of the dungeon remains a mystery to most explorers once they enter. They look into a guidebook and argue about the rarity of the plenty of flour. Its location changes every year, and it is endlessly sought as a valuable ingredient. The conversation turns to the sweet nectar of the flower. Hopes to use it to make sweets, recalling how highly his previous culinary experiments were rated. Noticing her hesitation, he offers to help with the next task, and she is momentarily distracted upon seeing him in April. She looked with wide-open eyes while her companion frantically flipped through the guidebook. His eyebrows knit in anxiety as he noticed grim warnings about the insurmountable nature of the forest. There is no way out. He proudly revealed the magical artifact is celestial. Web Threadend explained that it would serve as a reliable tether to bring them back to the entrance if they got lost. Turning to the experienced animal trainer, they asked about his past experience in the Lagrina forest to understand how real and serious the dangers ahead were. He said that, although they consulted with the fox girl to predict threats, there was no reason to panic. Their squad had the strength to overcome any creature they might encounter. Firmly holding his hands, he adjusted the equipment, admitting that although he himself dreamed of noting every creature in the forest, in practice, this task proved incredibly exhausting. The veteran warned, "Do not underestimate the forest inhabitants. Even familiar monsters can behave unpredictably on their own territory," but he confirmed their capability as high-level adventurers. The cart suddenly braked. A piercing screech stopped it in place, showing the boundary of the mysterious forests that were constantly shifting. They stood shoulder to shoulder before a radiant, intricate magical seal carved into ancient trees. The passage to the forest was now open and awaited the first step into the unknown. She stepped closer to her companions, while the veteran beast hunter confirmed that he would remain by the entrance just as before. He gave a final, weary smile. Acknowledging how difficult their task was, he made it clear he would lead them to the exit. With a slight wave, he encouraged them to move forward, believing each could overcome what lay ahead in their own unique way. The leader turned to his party, and his gaze sharpened with determination as he said, "It is time to move forward." They step into the trembling vertical abyss. The gates to the forest opened and ready to receive them. Crossing the threshold, the group vanished into the dense, ancient thickets, cutting off the world they knew behind them. The road ahead stretched into the unknown. A silent, overgrown path wound further and further into the very heart of the capricious forest, which was constantly changing. The alluring streamer smiles at the camera, greets her audience, and solemnly announces, "They have finally arrived at Lagna Forest for another exciting stream." She explains why they came and finds a capricious Printia flower, the very one that blooms only in this particular S-rank dungeon. But suddenly her gaze catches on a treasure chest, hidden among the roots as if waiting just for them. Excitedly, she shows it to her companions. While the comrades argue whether it is an imitator, the streamer playfully turns everything into a quiz for the viewers and asks them to guess what is inside. She throws out a confident verdict, "Let others look away and leave it alone, but she will investigate." And this is what causes a wary reaction in her team. Without any hesitation, she strikes her chest, and the wooden container instantly becomes a twitchy, aggressive creature. It suddenly grabs and slashes everything around. As soon as the creature lunges forward, she laughs. There is already an accurate forecast ahead while her comrades bustle, desperately shielding themselves from the sudden threat. The group stands among dense, ancient trees in the forest, gathered, ready to face the danger lurking in the shadows. She examines the strange spherical flora with interest, noting that she had never encountered such a specimen before, while her companion quietly marvels at the nature of these mountain vegetables. The group freezes, and suddenly a wave of nostalgia washes over them, making them think about the people in their village. A sudden piercing scream cuts through the silence and instantly turns fear inside out in Lysichka and her companion. Underfoot, the ground slips in a disgusting slide, and it becomes clear that they accidentally stepped right into a hidden spider's nest. Confused, she lets out a bewildered scream as thick, sticky tentacles burst from the darkness and grab her, attacking without warning. They struggle and fight in vain. The winding vines tighten their grip, trapping both the fox girl and her companion deeper and deeper. As if from the gloom flashes a terrible predatory intent, petals unfold and reveal a B-rank threat that begins to hungrily coil around the prey. Panic and despair overwhelm them as they strive to break free, but the vines prove merciless. They have to draw their weapons and, in a frantic attempt to survive, tear through the noose. She desperately presses her companions, demanding to break free as soon as possible, and her voice cuts through the air while a giant, toothy flower looms above them. In the chaos, she calls for help and asks if this creature is really a plant, although inside she still feels. In reality, it is something much darker. With a sharp and cruel snap, the predator shook the moss, and its jaws opened wide. Rows of torn, needle-like teeth appeared. As the plant is about to strike, he freezes and extends his hand, preparing to release specialized equipment. He rushes forward, pouring all his energy into a powerful strike, and shouts the name of his technique as he aims to cut a hole in the plant. The traveler gives his companion a brief warning to get her weapon, He says monsters are nearby, and the girl apologizes, honestly admitting she noticed nothing. Nearby, the fox girl watches the conversation and thinks. The expression on the companion's face looks almost deliberately provocative. He does not stop, continues his broadcast, and explains that the local monsters are too powerful, so they cannot approach directly. At the same time, he likes this. You can observe the landscape without leaving home and feel as if safe. In the dense forest, they freeze, irritated to the teeth. Despite all their progress, the deceptive flower beauty still does not appear anywhere. The fox girl sighs and explains. The flower, as they say, retains sweet nectar after absorbing enough sunlight. She also admits this can only be verified by rising high, flying, and heading into the sky. She suggests he simply toss her into the air so he can see better, but he instantly rejects the idea. Too dangerous. Despite his warning, she rises into the air on her own and searches for the scent of nectar while he stands and watches, still unable to feel anything. Suddenly she catches a faint, sweetish scent and excitedly nods towards a specific place, making him check where it came from. They find a cluster of lacuna goblins and lacuna mushrooms that have grown wildly in the clearing. She stood in the forest thicket watching as creeping lacuna goblins climbed, surrounding the group, and with grim certainty realized. They had nowhere else to go, were completely trapped. Arrows whistled in the air from all sides, and he desperately swung his huge scythe in a wide arc, deflecting the flying projectiles. He shouted for her to stay low behind the big tree. The arrows probably wouldn't reach her from the height, and she sharply nodded in response and gave his order back. The warrior surveyed the perimeter and frowned as soon as he realized. Charging directly into battle with distant monsters was a losing proposition. He needed a new strategy to break free from this dead end. Suddenly the ground beneath her gave way. With a heavy thud she fell into the bushes, and her confusion grew at the moment she finally realized something was wrong. She fell into the bushes, and he turned toward the sound of the collapse. Anxiety gripped his chest as he saw his companion disappear into the ground, and his voice caught in his throat as he called her name. The fox girl watched from where she stood. Her ears twitched in shock when she saw both her companions suddenly disappear from sight, leaving her alone, and now all that remained was to guess what had happened. She closed her eyes, a wave of remorse overwhelmed her. At the very moment, it became clear that she should have noticed the danger. But her companion had already rushed to flee. From the safe height of a tall branch, she watches as the cart stubbornly makes its way further through the dense forest full of mushrooms, unaware that trouble is already lurking underground. Isurus looks at the fallen comrades and with cold certainty understands. Toxic spores knocked them off course. He warns that these spores paralyze the body, but lacuna goblins have natural immunity, so they will be on them very soon. The fox girl still sits on the edge of the cliff, eyes wide open, her gaze a mix of fear and calculation. She estimates the next move and quietly whispers to herself, "Well, what will you do now?" The group remains anxious, urging each other to wake up faster while simultaneously puzzling over whether the fox girl is safe if she is not on the air. He is overwhelmed by growing horror. Only the streamer knows how to use the technology, so it is almost impossible to get the fox girl out of this situation. He is firm in his decision to act, calls his companion, and insists that they must hurry to save everyone before it is too late. The adventurer stops and contemplates the harsh truth of his mission. If he is defeated, it will only be the limit of his capabilities. And he tugs his comrades stand up, preparing for a fight ahead. With a heavy groan of tension, he raises his huge blade, exhales with relief. The time for their counterattack has finally come. He gathers all the remaining strength and realizes, despite the overwhelming pressure, he can still make his body move. When the creature lunges forward, he is pierced by an icy feeling. The defense may not be fast enough to intercept this blow. He lunges forward sharply, the blade cuts the air as it tries to sever the viscous, pulsating tentacles and snatch the fox girl from the grip. The monster squeezes her even tighter, and with growing horror she realizes, if it descends any lower, the same parasitic force will devour her. She struggles to maintain composure, but feels her movements increasingly restrained, and she no longer has the strength even to activate her own broadcasting equipment. A sudden, disgusting sucking sound cuts through the air, and she shudders as the dark gelatinous mass begins to drip onto her. The parasitic entity, a dangerous rank, envelops her, while movements draw mocking comments from the invisible audience over the banquet. She screams as the creature drains her life force. The nourishing energy clearly streams, flowing from her body into the semi-transparent mass. Seeing this grim moment, those watching exchange somber words. One says this is probably the end of their road. They analyze the threat, noting that Laguna Amoeba is slowly exhausting her energy, and estimate, to fully consume her, it will take a whole day. She remains trapped, and nearby a traveler questions the fuss. hinting that there is still time to gather and prepare a counterattack. He steps forward and shouts for the creature to release her. His voice cuts through the tense atmosphere as he prepares to intervene. But the strike does not break the bond. He lacks the strength to tear the parasite's grip. Looking into the despair in her eyes, she immediately understands. The amoeba must be removed at once, or her companion will not survive. He bursts forward. Movements raise a whirlwind of dust and energy as he tries to tear the essence from the place. Suddenly she is struck by a suspicion. If she repeats movements like that vine she saw earlier, she can summon a tornado without touching the ground. They meet eyes and understand each other without words before she orders to perform the great wheel technique. She initiates the spinning fast, sharp. The body becomes a continuous blur of movements, and the technique carves into the air, accelerating a mighty cyclone. She pushes out the amoeba. Watching the dark mass fly away, she exhales wearily yet with relief. She checks the streamer. It confirms that although numbness remains, she can already move. Then they shift their gaze to the surroundings. The comrade has disappeared from sight. Gasha rushes into battle, holding her huge saber high and falling onto the mountain terrain to confront the approaching threat. He unleashes a powerful technique, Sheridan Isin, and slicing through the air with electric precision, makes his way through the enemies around. He sees chaos. The streamer shouts for him to return, and the fox girl replies that no one but him can repel such a focused attack. The young fox girl lands firmly on the ground, instantly assumes a combat stance, and prepares for the next wave of the clash. While she erects a defensive barrier, an earth explosion bursts outward, and she reproaches the opponent for losing focus in the heat of battle. In a moment, the fox girl disappears from sight, and her companion remains stunned and flustered, trying to find where she is. A sudden power strike rolls through the air in waves, as a fist finds an invisible target and breaks the silence of the clash. She stands amid the settling gunpowder, and she managed to repel the attackers by releasing explosive force outward. She delivers the decisive blow, movement smooth and precise, and with one swift motion neutralizes all remaining threats. Cheered by her play, he shifts his gaze to the streamer, who quickly assures them that she is fine and focused on capturing their heroic actions for her audience. As the immediate threat recedes, he signals a counterattack, and his resolve strengthens as he prepares to move forward. Looking back at the quiet forest, he finally admits, the skirmish is over and now a tense silence hangs around. She apologizes for her earlier hesitation, and he suggests they pause for a moment, to check their gear and sharpen their skills to face what lies ahead better prepared. The streamer addresses the viewers and announces a short break in the broadcast, so the party can recover and regroup. The forest envelops everything in silence deep and heavy, as the group finally gains a moment of respite. Green leaves let through soft, filtered light. Here they find shelter for a moment from the harshness of their journey. She steps into shallow water. The cold liquid washes away the remnants of the recent skirmish. Nearby, her companions rested by the shore. One sighed and complained about the sticky, nasty residue left on the skin, while another cautiously warned not to lose vigilance completely. He turned his gaze to the girl with bald ears, praised how skillfully she used earth barrier during the fight, then laughed, saying maybe this technique can really be adapted to clear roads from fields. While the conversation continued, the streamer decided to check the comments from the broadcast, and her face immediately hardened. Sharp, acute concern as soon as she saw the screen. Fully immersed in the broadcast, she noticed. Her own remarks stirred up more excitement than the antics of her companions. She froze, her gaze sliding to a small hole in the ground, and suddenly curiosity pierced her, stirred by the hidden cavity. Her voice sharply breaks with anxiety as soon as she shows. The wounds on the creature have disappeared. The companions immediately rush there, confused. Stunned by such rapid recovery, they decide to collect samples for further study while she is urged to dress properly. They survey the surrounding forest, and with growing concern note, the landscape seems to have shifted since they last saw it from above. To break through the dense thickets, one of them suggests resorting to force, imitating the destructive power of a great storm. He doubts the practicality of climbing with spider silk, given its rarity and high cost, while she remains optimistic about their aerial route. Deep in the forest, the fox girl freezes, catching something unusual in the air as they delve further into the unknown. She dashed forward and shouted to her companion to follow as soon as they reached the glowing, hidden entrance to the cave. They knelt before a cluster of rare, sweet-smelling, luxurious flowers, and could not believe the discovery. The young fox girl shone with pride, basking in praise for her sharp senses and successful finds. She carefully pulled out the plant, explaining the delicate process of preserving the roots so that the nectar remained intact. When the sample was securely fixed, she revealed, this was only the first stage of a larger plan which had already been announced on the air. She excitedly blurted out the next stage, The collected nectar would be used on the film set to bake sweets, and this led her companion to exhausted, amused laughter. Suddenly the ground beneath them gave way, and her companion fell into a hidden pit. She froze, and her ears twitched as soon as she felt something deeply disturbing lurking in the bowels of the earth. She senses danger even before the ground begins to tremble. She shouts a warning, and the ground beneath them tears apart wildly. He immediately gives the command. Everyone scatter. He himself grabs a heavy blade, thrusts it into the layer beneath his feet, and braces himself, blocking the surge. The earth tears with a whistle, and he is shocked. A gigantic armored creature bursts from beneath the ground, yet he cannot comprehend how such a monster could have been hiding in these forests at all. Above him towers a colossal worm-like monster, and its torn maw blinks as it prepares to strike. The giant, monstrous creature lunges forward. Its maw lashes and snaps with terrifying force while the traveler raises his blade to meet the attack. The blade strikes the beast's hide, but it responds as hard as stone. He recoils, simultaneously checking if his companion is safe. They identify the threat as a sandworm, a desert predator that swallows entire trade caravans without chewing. Having obtained the flower stamp, he urges the group, "Let's flee immediately while there is still a chance." She calls him to stop, and the urgent alarm on her face sharply changes expression. The danger is obvious. If it is not stopped, the creature will inevitably migrate from the desert to where people already are towards the forest and the city. Panic is inevitable. Among the spectators, noise rises as a giant worm looms over the settlement, and people desperately shout that now is not the time for jokes. He tightly gripped the sword, deciding to hold his ground and crush the beast right here just as the fox girl steps forward, offering her help. He stood silently, calculating the consequences of the confrontation unfolding before him, and wondered if others planned to intervene. The giant sandworm rose above the horizon, its colossal size blocking everything around. He realized, this is just a juvenile, and probably it was drawn to the oasis because other creatures were already there. Nearby, the streamer doubted the wisdom of his inaction. Supposedly, just watching is enough and you already reveal yourself to the whole world and even push them to fight. He acknowledged her correctness and agreed. If they help, they must act directly, and getting involved in the fight against the monster is a risk that you pull on yourself as well. Calmly and confidently, he declared. He has no intention of leaving the city. Let others go through this trial their own way. The fox girl dashed to position. Her delicate body dissolved in motion as she prepared to distract the giant creature. He rushed forward. The blade struck the creature's skin, but with no effect. He understood. He needed to repeat the technique he once used to break a golem, and while doing this rely on Fox Girl to create a breach. The ground jerked and trembled from the fierce vibration as the worm prepared a counterattack, and he, exhaustedly shouting, forced allies to be ready before the impending strike. He prepared himself as the sandworm unleashed a blinding, deafening attack from its jaws, and all the fierce energy tore through the air. The adventurer barely managed to slip away from the destructive beam. It swept her up into the air like a whirlwind, while the ground beneath was shattered by the creature's merciless attacks. Seeing the undeniable power of the beast, the fox girl screamed in panic and with a trembling voice assured that they had no chance, and retreat was the only real option. The animal bursts out from underground and releases a high-pressure jet of sand. Asuras surveys the ruins and notes, "Such a strike splits both stone and forest, truly incredibly formidable." He cannot find a breach. The blade fails to reach the beast. It burrows deep beneath the surface, and this only increases his irritation. The opponent's camouflage proves too deep. The monster lunges forward again, forcing him to dodge. Missouri shouts a warning, naming the strikes and retreats of this creature and urging vigilance, as it will gather strength for the next blow. She presses against a tree, eyes wide open, watching the chaotic slaughter while her supplies lie scattered very close by. When the dust settles, she sees delicate petals of a beautiful flower floating in the air, a sharp contrast to the violence raging right before her. Suddenly the ground splits beneath her. The monster's massive, deadly jaws snap shut just inches from where she had just stood. He springs into action and intercepts the creature at the moment of attack, shielding her. His blade strikes precisely on the monster's body. The beast jerks back, wounded. He says that, having anticipated the creature's habit of exposing its belly during attacks, he finally managed to deliver a decisive blow. He realized one strong strike to the creature's underbelly would be enough to finish it off. When the dust settled, the company burst into jokes. One even threw out that it was time to go to the bathhouse, since the fight seemed to be won. Yet they did not relax and remained on alert, because even amid the chatter, the situation was far from calm. He frowned, barely furrowing his brow, and admitted, the current approach would not allow them to deliver a real counterattack. Turning back to his companions, he asked how they could possibly drive out the beast if it remained in the air. emphasizing that without a solid foothold it would be extremely difficult to aim. She joined in and agreed. Greater force was needed, and her companion with a smile joked and praised her insight. The fox girl froze in readiness, showing that she had a plan up her sleeve and took a defensive stance. Suddenly the creature lunged from above, forcing him to react instantly. The ground cracked from the impact of its landing. He tensed his whole body as the earth beneath him collapsed with tremendous force. The ground split, and a sudden, bottomless chasm opened beneath his feet. Near the forest, a giant creature bursts out from underground, and an involuntary cry of surprise escapes. The towering leap throws the traveler off course. Nearby, the fox girl struggles with the throbbing pain from her wounds and urges her companion on, fully understanding that the situation is rapidly becoming dangerous. He stays alert with his blade ready, while the streamer notices that the silk webbing is too resilient. It cannot be cut by ordinary means, nor even by an entire squad. And the traveler calls her to rescue, urging, "Take the fox girl and retreat to safety," while she herself prepares to channel the spirit's power into her weapon. She looks with annoyance at how the conflict unfolds and complains. Because of the distance, she cannot capture the best shots for her broadcasts. Suddenly, her interface twitches with an alarming impulse. A double ribbon of windows appears on the screen, and she freezes, because viewers flood the chat with questions about this unexpected appearance. Now the broadcast clearly shows the aerial clash, so he gathers the viewers, calls them to support with shouts while fighting high above the ground. With a jerk he rises into the air, strikes with the blade using powerful technique, and determined, wants to finish the beast with a single final blow. He watches as the giant creature finally falls. Its threat is destroyed by a decisive strike. Returning to her audience, the streamer shines with excitement, showing the rare flowers they collected while the fallen beast lies motionless in the background. They talked about the way home and wondered if someone would come to meet them, while recalling how hard it was to navigate without the silk web they relied on. The beast tamer nods to the group with a calm smile, acknowledging the fatigue of the day, and together with relief feels. The dangerous task is finally completed. Meanwhile, the broadcast reaches the Adventurer Association. The officials watch the recording closely, preparing to investigate the events unfolding in the forest. He reveals the full seriousness of the situation and says directly that the appearance of such a creature in the forest cannot go unnoticed, so they will have to file an official report about the encounter. The group agrees with the plan and, gathering together, moves on preparing to deal with the consequences of their fight. He looks at the defeated creature and wonders whether their appearance here was truly accidental, or the result of something much more calculated. The day begins with the familiar, exhausting routine of rural life. He tends the crops under the quiet morning light. He replays the unexpected turn of events in his mind and realizes he has been living in this live report vibe for 3 days now, and even catches himself thinking that he relies on others to keep the garden in order. But he is met with a sudden and exhausting sight. The vegetables have completely wilted, and he freezes, stunned by shock and confusion. He breaks down in despair. He had watered them morning and evening, yet the harvest still failed. And now it turns out, he can't even leave the shack to address the problem. The burden of failure hits him so hard that his shoulders involuntarily slump, and he silently looks at the ruined harvest, not believing his own eyes. She approaches him, extends a bottle of water, and suggests trying it. Maybe it will help cope with what is happening. As soon as the water touches the ground, a miracle happens. The wilted plant begins to swell and astonishingly quickly regains life. He silently freezes, enchanted by the restored harvest, and learns that the water came from a lake in the forest. It has strong restorative properties. He thanks her for the timely intervention. He watched as she examined the water bottle and noticed a mysterious, powerful energy clearly flows within it. Even the reconnaissance squad has already acknowledged this. She suggests not wasting time and immediately putting the water to use, implying that it might even enhance the quality of their cooking. A sudden surge of energy, and she splashed the water on the crops. He froze in shock, impressed by the sheer power of her action. She returned to him with a radiant smile and said that they still lack supplies, so they will have to return to the lake for more. In a moment, she turned to her audience and announced a new challenge. They would head home only after defeating 500 field monsters. The surrounding fields were seized by a pack of Gimmer riders. Now no one could approach the crops without risk. She explained that they were helping the farm owner with the harvest while simultaneously hunting pests. Yet she couldn't resist teasing him about his overly eager facial expression. He took the helm and ordered her to carefully destroy the Gimmer riders without damaging the precious grain, while he prepared for the harvest. He gave the signal of readiness, and the girl with bald ears nearby sharply and clearly confirmed the order with a brief acknowledgement, holding a ready posture and preparing for what lay ahead. With a movement light flowing, he applied the butterfly dance technique. The blade sliced through the air, and a giant, chitinous insect-like creature emerged from the crops, its jaws snapping in a threatening rhythm. Studying its enormous size intently, he noted with a grim smile. The beast did not flee, it chose to leap into an attack directly at them, and this fit perfectly with his plan. Engaging with the swarm, he immediately realized the scale of the infestation far exceeded their initial estimate of 500, so he bitterly observed that they were like butterflies drawn to the scorching summer sun. When he had successfully removed the immediate threat, he wiped sweat from his brow and waved to his comrades. It was time to catch their breath for the harvest, and he asked the spectators not to look away, to keep watching their progress. The girl with bald ears watched the monster motionlessly and saw how its body and rage grew like an echo of that same terrifying past incident. She doubted the unnatural surge in crop growth, recalling the landowner's insistence. The area under cultivation had not changed. Pushing her companion, she pointed to the picket fences and suggested taking a closer look at the strange course of events. The ground emitted a strange smell, and she immediately noticed. The grain had ripened much earlier than the harvest time, although the news still confirmed a surge in monster activity nearby. The next day, they decided to report these findings to the guild. They inspected the fields one last time before departure. The next day, as soon as they arrived at the guild, the members of Golden Sun greeted them warmly. The streamer reads the official report and states that the recent recruitment was a tremendous success. She jokingly suggests later stopping by for tea and bringing along the girl with the bald ears, but she is immediately pulled back. They need to focus on their work. She stood before the guild official, and suddenly the surprise shifted. Wide-open eyes as she absorbed what she had just been told. The atmosphere remained businesslike. The guild staff acknowledged the effectiveness of their work, but the girl with the bald ears nearby suddenly seemed to sense a gloomy change in the mood. Without hesitation for a second, she sharply turned around and dashed off. Her boots thudded heavily on the floor as she rushed to handle the urgent matter that had just erupted. She darted with wild energy, giving new instructions to her companion. They did not need to look for an autograph. Instead, they headed straight to the office on the second floor. Having reached the destination, she firmly knocked on the door. Her heart was pounding wildly as she prepared to enter the room where high-ranking officials awaited her. Inside, she was almost swearing when she saw a familiar face. Melbus was sitting comfortably and nudged an exclamation of surprise as reality finally began to sink in. The man with an elegant posture stood up to greet them and with practiced ease introduced himself. Kate Almond, president of the Guild Association. He gestured for them to sit down. He spoke firmly and seriously. He had just asked for detailed reports they had brought, so it became clear to everyone that the time for polite conversations was over. She listened as the man before her reported. He had just received a similar report from the president of the Adventurer Association, Biggin. Then he unfolded an explanation that Melbus, the #1 streamer, asks viewers to be cautious in these moments. The conversation shifted to the current state of affairs. They noted a recent surge in monster populations and strange activity in the Graham region. Running his finger over the map, he showed that in the adventurers' reports sent from various locations, it was noted that these anomalies were not limited to monsters alone. He added that even the agricultural crops in this area showed signs of abnormal growth, a phenomenon related to the waters of the Sinals River, which flows from distant mountains to the sea and nourishes local farming. Making them ponder the consequences, he asked them to wait a moment, and only after that did he himself contemplate the weight of these discoveries. After that, he showed a sample. Water analysis from a tributary of the Sinos River near Lagnaforst revealed a specific alarming component. The revelation struck sharply. Traces of black stone from the ceiling remained in the water, an ancient artifact once used to restrain powerful, dangerous monsters from an era long before the current broadcast culture spread. She sorts everything out and has no doubt. The pollution in the Sinals River originates from the black ceiling stone structure upstream, which emits magical energy. Her gaze darkens sharply, her eyes widen as she realizes the terrible consequence. The monsters once imprisoned by the stone are beginning to revive. She clenches her fist, and determination hardens in her eyes as she confirms. They are organizing a group to investigate and stop the resurgence of these ancient threats at any cost. The traveler announces that he will set off to the village in the upper reaches tomorrow, and asks if he can join the expedition. They nod and agree, saying that with the local guide the investigation will proceed without difficulties. He asks if he is allowed to take companions with him, assuring that they will not interfere in any way. The guild representative responds gratefully and confirms, as soon as the black stones are found, they will be managed just like the dungeons. He raises his hand, the conversation hangs in a pause. She asks if the investigation can be handed over, provided they keep their whereabouts secret and avoid any trouble. Documents indicate there are several black stones, so for the next records, visual documentation will need to be made. He agrees, adds that raising awareness among many will be beneficial, and welcomes cooperation. He listens attentively as the conversation shifts to why it is important to spread accurate information about possible disaster dangers, until others emphasize, no unnecessary panic is needed. Continuing the briefing, he explains that the Golden Sun serves as a shield for people from monsters, and that conveying this knowledge to society is a matter of life and safety. The group responds with sincere enthusiasm. Voices rise and join in a chorus of confident yes as they prepare for the task ahead. Somewhere very close by, a glass stands empty. The last sip has been drained, so in the bar the patron's moment of irritation is already brewing. The patron demands another round, and his voice cuts through the silence inside the establishment. He suddenly explodes in a fit of rage, cursing his circumstances and the very injustice of the situation he found himself in. Still unsettled, he stares intently at the document demanding compensation for damages, and his irritation only grows as he contemplates how to finally sever all ties. Silence stretches until a broadcast is turned on. Melbus appears as if about to deliver something extremely important to the people. She continued the broadcast, warning the public. The number of monsters in the Graham region has sharply increased, and she urged everyone who encounters a large dark stone to immediately contact the Adventurer Association. In the tavern, visitors whispered to each other, saying that the man with the giant sword can easily deal with any monster, so their safety is guaranteed. They glanced at the mysterious figure in the hood, examining who he was and what heavy weapon was hidden in his hands. Suddenly, the tavern owner slammed his palm on the table, demanding an explanation of what the stranger had done to his regular customer. His voice was heavy with anger. The man, hooded, retreated into the street and muttered curses under his breath. His anger grew as soon as he realized he was being expelled. He stopped, and his eyes widened with sudden insight when he saw a group of travelers nearby. Nearby, the team coordinated their next actions. One confirmed he would investigate Blackstone, and another took on the vegetable crops. The one in the shadows, from beneath his hood, thoughtfully weighed the rumors about Blackstone and the legends of monsters sealed there, wondering if the streamer's words held even a drop of truth. He barely smiled, and the pieces finally fell into place in his mind as he considered the investigation of black stones, the sharp surge in monster activity, and the broadcast from Elbis. Clenching his fists in impatience, he whispered a dark promise to make Gashu pay for the humiliation he had to endure. 3 days after their departure, the team approaches Maslif. Their turn feels like anticipation, and the weight of impending changes hangs over everything. They have restless energy. They will wonder if everyone is okay and if they will have time to prepare before the investigation begins. Suddenly, the air thickens and a fire dragon attacks them. Its appearance demands immediate attention. He orders everyone to stay inside the wagon for safety, and he himself goes out to meet the threat, determined not to let the hunters disrupt his duty. The beast roars so loudly it blocks out the ears. A giant figure looms over the village, and he watches in horror, fearing for the safety of the inhabitants. When the creature attacks, an A-rank adventurer intervenes. His blade slaps against the monster's hide, and he notes with surprise how incredibly tough the beast's body is. Chaos grows. The Horror writhes in battle. The wyvern rises into the fight and flies above everything, circling from above with a lethal menace. He turns to his grandmother and transfers the defense to her, and she accepts the challenge calmly, in a ready stance, holding the weapon with practiced ease. He freezes in a dull stupor as the monster clamps its jaws and clicks. But the sudden rage seems to paralyze both him and his companions for a moment. Such a huge and terrifying threat is revealed by its very scale. They gather instantly and shout for everyone to hold the line against the beast's devastating pressure, while the shepherd wyvern circles high above them. Exhaustingly pushing against the mass of the monster, the defenders fight not to fall but eventually clearly feel. The clash demands an incredible physical toll. A warning scream cuts through the air as a massive spiked tail with deadly intent makes a wide swing. A moment more, and it would have hit that code, but it misses. Noticing the chaos, they exchange worried glances. They feel that something has suddenly shifted in the monster's behavior. With a decisive strike, that mighty lash reaches its target. The bees, knocked off course, retreat, and the clash just begins to unfold differently. They freeze in confusion, watching as the creature suddenly breaks from its aggressive pace, and the sharp switch stuns them. A mysterious power flares over the battlefield. It pins the dragon in place with a radiant, ephemeral seal that radiates incredible power. He stands among the ruins after the fight and watches as his comrades recover from the fierce clash. He brushes off praise, but admits he could have handled the situation with the help of Morphinus. As the danger recedes, the crowd around begins to stir. An official voice cuts through the murmur and assures everyone the area is safe so they can calmly proceed to the village. When the threat is neutralized, he shifts his gaze to the spoils of battle and orders the others to start transporting the huge creature back for a future feast. One of the comrades teases him about his grim expression, saying even a famous traveler shouldn't look so broken. He replies, maybe they are just stronger than they seem, but warns his friend don't get carried away. The team gathers together. The tension of battle finally releases, and relief washes over them as they gladly welcome him back. The village lies peacefully beneath the high mountains, unaware of the narrow escape that just happened right on its doorstep. The group raises wooden mugs high, and a loud toast cuts through the air, celebrating Gashu's return home. He laughs in response to the teasing and says that the juice is already saved for tomorrow. Others jokingly pull him, saying that he and his comrade look just like a married couple. She sits nearby and savors the food, while the villagers glance at her and insist that she looks exactly like Gosha's daughter. The young fox girl suddenly leans forward and pleadingly asks the woman to take her as an apprentice so she can learn how to defeat monsters, but she is immediately told. First, she needs to build physical strength. He shifts his gaze to Sigurd and noticeably exhales with relief. Finally, someone with such knowledge has joined the investigative team. The conversation shifts to the logistics of the next day. They agree to take the rest with them and head to the planned meeting with the village head. A heavy mood settles over the table as they aloud consider the troubling presence of something dangerous is lurking somewhere near the village. He concludes with a request to warn the villagers. Let them stay within the village limits until the investigation is complete, hoping to avoid unnecessary fuss. He stood by the window firm in his decision to watch the black stone along the river at dawn because he understood well. The dangers of the night make an immediate journey unwise. Returning to his companions, he distributed bottles with the same spirit-releasing substance and made sure everyone was ready to face the darkness ahead. When preparations ended, he gestured for the group to risk saying that the work for today was finished. Suddenly, an unexpected thought flashed in his mind. The fox girl said she would spend the night in their house, and he froze for a moment in shock. He stepped closer. His brow furrowed. Confusion did not leave him as he asked what it meant to spend the night in such close quarters together with her. The explanation was given and it became clear. The local house was overcrowded, so there was no other choice but to take her in at home. He uttered only a confused sound of surprise. Just a moment ago everything was different, and now he had to digest this sudden change of residence. From outside, the latch of the small hut clicked and locked, so the silence in the house became deeper until the night thickened. He gestured toward the bed, insisting that the guests take it, while he would find somewhere else to rest. His voice was firm but with concession. She folded her hands together and gave a soft, dismissive smile, saying that sharing space was perfectly normal. His face flushed a deep crimson. He completely lost his composure, thrown off by the unexpected proposal. The cramped space left only a few centimeters for two, and he nervously pointed to the lack of room, while she happily did not notice how his anxiety grew. He accepted everything with a sigh. He resigned himself to the arrangement and felt the time for their plans was already coming to an end. Settling at the table, the group turned their gaze to the upcoming expedition. They argued about rumors surrounding Blackstone. From the darkness emerged an ancient tale about monsters, about creatures so terrible that their very presence could pierce even the hearts of the bravest warriors with fear. He leaned closer, frowning, and asked how their predecessors had even managed to withstand such colossal power. The elder pondered what the battle against demons must be like. He said these clashes go beyond human understanding and cannot be grasped by simple imagination. He explained that the Shinjinryu style is based on a deep secret technique. It lets the spirits of heaven and earth pass through one's own vessel. Gasha listened carefully. His eyebrows furrowed gloomily. He was contemplating the colossal scale of the Genbu technique. The elder admitted he could only give an approximate plan, yet firmly believed Gasha was capable of mastering Genbu. In a moment, the two travelers parted for the night, exchanged brief farewells, and preparing to rest, each settled in their own way. As soon as he turned to leave, the fox girl stopped, her face flushed with embarrassment, when she suddenly realized she had forgotten something important. She called forth fiery light to guide their way, and your heart suddenly recoiled. You looked back in surprise at this unexpected glow, Gashu. Gasha smiled, said she thanked her for the help, and invited her to continue the journey together. He listens until the companion recalls his rare ability to speak with spirits, emphasizing she had never encountered anyone like him before. She looks at him sincerely, and with surprise it is clear that she is moved by the depth of his connection with the invisible world. With a nod full of determination, he secures his gear and prepares for what lies ahead. Nearby, a feather dances across the parchment, capturing the full weight of the moment as the documents come out ready. While she focuses on administrative duties for the guild and for his sake, he steps into the silence of the moonlit field's blade at the ready. He calls the name Flame Emperor and infuses his weapon with the essence of all spirits until it bursts into a fierce, otherworldly spark. The Shu device was supposed to pour flame into the weapon to cut monsters, but when he tests it, he feels only a faint warmth instead of the roaring fire he saw. Angry but not giving up, he decides to keep training, while somewhere else others study scrolls, hoping to find the key to his success. From the depths of the cave once sealed, a monster emerges at night, a clawed hand appearing through the darkness, signaling a terrible return. The group stops and scrutinizes the tracks on the ground. Ribbon flags indicate the route they must follow them. Despite the strange moment, she insists, going on air right now is the perfect opportunity. She explains, winking, that the record of their journey acts as a deterrent. Potential thieves will be afraid to leave a permanent digital trace. Addressing the audience, she notes how amazingly bright it is here in the cave and explains that the insect that glows in a similar way makes their reconnaissance much easier. She asks the viewers to closely watch for anything unusual while her companions prepare to assist, monitor the stream, and catch any signs of trouble. Tension rises as soon as they notice. The walls and ceiling are damp and unpleasant to the touch, and a stern warning sounds to stay away from any contact. Suddenly the surface begins to tremble and they gasp. The walls are not made of stone at all. The spectators shudder with disgust as the true nature of the cave is revealed. It is covered with countless blinking eyes. The reaction is instantaneous. Adventurers grab weapons and blind creatures with light from insects to make their way forward. He signals to the girl with bald ears, "Cover your eyes," and warns the viewers. Do the same. A dazzling flash is about to burst. Bright, scorching light tears upward, momentarily burning away the darkness of the cave and confusing any shadows that were hiding in it. When the light went out, the whole company shuddered at the grotesque sight. The cave walls were shedding skin. He encouraged the streamer for the effective, though shocking, tactical use of fireflies that spill out light. They quickly felt the terrain. The beam stretched toward the exit, but it was almost torn off the treacherous cliff, and the partner sharply jerked forward, warning in time. The broadcast continued while they examined the distant mountain ridges. They felt a powerful magical presence and wondered if someone was hiding among the peaks. He conferred with the ally, confirming neither the black stone nor any strangers were detected at the current source location, so now it remained to consider whether their target had escaped. He pointed to the water flowing down the rocky slope and suggested tracing the stream upward to the source to possibly finally reach that same missing black stone. With firm agreement, they decided to float following the current, and suddenly the ground beneath their feet parted, revealing a hidden passage. He noticed tracks leading straight to the water and frowned, muttering that they needed to hurry to make it in time. The streamer apologized for the interruption and announced the resumption of the broadcast, while she herself followed the trail, feeling a sudden, so tactile and obvious tension in the air. They froze over a deep ditch, trying to understand where it came from, and the fox girl looked at everything with anxiety. Before them stretched a huge grotto. Its vastness was oppressive, as if a small, lonely pedestal in the center only emphasized. There supposedly the sacred blade was kept. He waved toward the center, called it the Black Stone, and urged the group to take it as quickly as possible, warning about the terrifying cracks already crawling across the surface. A familiar voice broke the silence, mocking his lateness just as he finally realized. The newcomer is Gashu. The rookie mocked them, let them go ahead. Meanwhile, he stood in a circle of dark, shadowy entities, brushing off their complaints as if they were trivial matters from the past. Asuras held a small, empty vial, and his thoughts twitched until he recognized it as an effective medicine warning, probably taken from the Black Mark. Suddenly, a memory hit him like a whirlwind. Yesterday, the smell lingered near the village elder's house, and at that moment it clicked in his head. He made himself ask the fox girl where she got that item. Adventures only heighten anxiety, so probably the wisest thing is to temporarily leave this matter alone. The mysterious presence has already pushed the process forward, so the group did not stop but stayed to consider the path ahead. Time is running out, and while the smell dissipates, the team decides to move along the river as originally planned. The streamer shows a hand-drawn map. She analyzed months of broadcasts to transfer the area onto it. She points to specific landmarks and notes. If they explore these key places, eventually they will manage to uncover the truth they seek. She listens attentively while her companion explains the nuances of training, recalling the advice she received before sleep to hone her own technique. He brushes off the difficulties, emphasizing, His body is just beginning to get used to the work that lies ahead. He acknowledges the challenge and reminds her, new skills cannot be mastered overnight, so they decide to move forward together. Their focus abruptly shifts from the spot when a horned rabbit suddenly jumps out of the weeds, and both are overwhelmed with confusion. The beast rushes forward with unexpected fierce strength. Its size and magical aura have clearly grown, so the group instantly reacts to the threat. A sharp metallic clap, and the creature strikes with powerful limbs at full speed, breaking the space around it while the adventurers scatter frantically, taking cover. When the dust settles, she carefully surveys the area and confirms the immediate danger has been neutralized. Next, she makes special paper to measure magical concentration and notes. The darker the shade, the higher the intensity of residual energy. Excitedly, she explains that by using water, they have already managed to conduct a double ether, and at the same time adds, magical concentration in this area is sharply increasing. He listens attentively while the conclusions of the Adventurer Association are announced. They confirm, if the water is drunk, the magic quickly depletes within a few days. The group freezes in shocked stupor, looking at the creature before them, and gasps as they realize the presence of the black stone. He feels the threat thickening and his face hardens. The monsters have clearly increased in number, and very soon they will be here among them. Shaking from the sudden noise nearby, he sharply urges the others, quickly find a place to hide before we are discovered. As danger approaches, he orders the others to press forward, while he stays behind to deal with the monsters and keep the path clear for them. But at that very moment, the entrance suddenly collapses in a cloud of dust and debris, and he is struck with shock from the unexpected turn of events, as if paralyzed. In feverish panic, he checks the communication device and, choking with despair, tries to confirm. Gashu is safe after the three of them pass through it. He stands firm and declares that he will not stop the chase, while the companion urges and warns, first let the group reach the headwaters.